Yep. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you got 4.5 minutes, man. I mean, oh my gosh, Sean, you're turning into a prima donna here. I mean, you abandoned me. You abandoned me yesterday. I know. I know. All right, buddy. No worries. Right. Here we go. Hello, this is the Simpit I am Bald Man Cole. I'm sorry. I'm Amir. I'm not Sean Bald Man Cole. I did that.
Already out of the gate.
Billy dared me to do that intro.
I mean, sort of.
Kind of.
Sort of.
He kind of bribed me behind the scenes. No, I'm joking. Welcome, guys. Welcome. This is episode 4 of the Simpit Podcast. As always, me and Sean are always sitting here hosting it, but we don't have just one guest. We've got 2 guests. So we've got the voice of the sim racing gods, Billy Strange, and we've also got Dan, the man, DiMaggio. We were able to bribe him out of the bushes with some cheesecake, so he's out here.
I do love cheesecake.
You know, in the case of Billy being the voice, I mean, how many people listen to Billy while they race? I mean, quite literally. I mean, Billy, you're my crew chief, by the way. Just so you know, when I race it is your voice on my racing. Yeah.
I listen to Billy before I go to sleep, just to let you know.
Oh, well, I mean, who doesn't?
Oh man, so how are you guys doing?
Good.
Billy,
Good.
you've been
Thanks
streaming a lot lately.
Yeah. Streaming's just been. It's fun to be able to just hang out with people, kind of throw ideas back and forth, and I don't know. I've been having a good time with streaming both on Twitch and YouTube. So, yeah.
Cool, man. And then we also got Dan. Dan, you were making content for a long time, then you took a hiatus, and now you've come back pretty strong too, man. So how does it feel? How does it feel to be back?
It's exciting. What I missed the most was like hanging out with you guys, really, and just people that watch the videos and stuff. Because it is a chore to make videos. I won't even lie. It's not my favorite thing to do. But when you get out of the community for a little while, it's kind of exciting to get back in. And when I'm out, I'm always like watching you guys and stuff like that. So, gave me the kick to get back in. Maybe I will slow down at some point again. For sure, it seems to be my cycle. But right now, we're going strong. We'll see what happens.
Nice, man. I mean, it's always good.
And also, thank you for having me, guys. I really appreciate this. This is very cool.
Thank you, man. Yeah, no, it's good.
I'd say it's long overdue, actually.
It is. Should be right.
I appreciate that.
This is where the podcast, this is where we want to bring on other people. We want to sit there and talk with them and chat, talk about sim racing and some other things. So, it's great to have, both you and Billy on here, Dan. So, thank you guys for agreeing to come on to the show.
For sure, anytime.
So we'll get right into it. So, first we'll get into topic, kind of ease our way into this. And we'll start with Sean. Sean, how did you get into sim racing? So if you want to explain your story, and we'll go around with everybody. Give a good couple of minutes about, what got you into sim racing.
It was soon after they invented the wheel.
I do remember seeing a hieroglyphic drawing of you.
Yeah.
Like the actual.
You had the square one, didn't you? You had the square one.
Yeah. Well, and you've heard the whole term digital and analog, and then there was actually pushing it up the hill yourself. No,
Fred Flintstoning
it. Racing. And I guess there's a relevance to what I was saying about the wheel. Sim racing for me, and I'm sure a lot of you too, so it's not just because I'm in the dark ages, but it started with Hot Wheels. I mean, honestly, this desire to just play with cars and have them go fast. I mean, I had this silly little thing where the cars just went around and did the figure 8, a clover leaf intersection. And I had a cop car and a civilian car, and you didn't do anything but turn them on, and they just went around. I think you could flip a thing, make a turn or something. And it was but this was the beginning roots of me just loving this whole world. And then of course computers and things. So I mean, honestly, now we go back to Atari, and it's okay, games like that if you looked at them now, like Knight Rider, and it's just dots and you just a fixed car stuck in the screen and the dots move and anyway, so it really began long before I would call it sim racing, and then sim racing, I mean, I really have to go back to the OGs. I mean, Indy 500 the game, which was like my real first memory of a sim, or something that was we're not a game, we're a sim, feel about it. but I was playing with a keyboard, and it was like, okay, 22 quick taps on the left key to get around turn 3 at Indy, and then I'd play with a joystick for a while because we didn't have any steering wheels. And then finally, steering wheels started coming along. And then, Jeff Crammon's Grand Prix was the first time I played what felt like a sim, but was like visually stimulated by it.
Right.
And then from there, I can't believe here we are like 30 years later of those dates. And it's like it's so
You're
evolved.
not supposed to date yourself like this. Look, Hannah beats me, and then we have issues.
Yeah, and then I see Dave in the chat. I mean, and then there's the whole arcade era, and like pole position. I mean, that was when a quarter would actually get you a full video game, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I mean,
unfortunately, I was right behind that curve.
It was
arcades were kind of starting to go out of style.
Oh yeah.
As I was coming up, so I did miss that. I hate it.
God, Billy says I'm not supposed to, but literally, my first arcade days were skee ball and
my goodness,
air hockey.
Yep.
The coolest games were like you'd put a nickel in, and it would like a physical ball like this size, like a marble, would get pitched out. And you'd have a button that would just swing a bat, and it was like that was the whole game. And there were like spots to get it, So yeah, I mean, it is weird to look at where it all started and what we do now, and it's like there's no comparison, but it was an evolution, So yeah, that's my history. I mean, I can't think of many things that happened before I was playing them, and then that's the other part of it. Yes, I still play shooters. Yes, I still play fantasy games. I still play strategy games. But it's like racing games always made up at least half of what I was doing in the gaming world.
Right.
And the Pac-Man and Asteroids and everything else equaled the other half.
Yeah.
So all those combined. So yeah. I still love it. I mean, it's just it's cars, man. It's cars, it's racing. It's just I don't want to say it's manly, but it just gets my inner nerves, So yeah. All right, that's it. I'm done.
Hey, I have one quick question for you about that, Sean. Sorry.
Yeah.
I am curious, and I think a lot of people are. When did you meet Darren? How did you two guys meet originally?
Okay, I don't remember the exact year. I could approximate. It was probably like 20 years ago.
Okay.
We were doing a online race. I believe this would be I believe this was the Team Redline mod for NASCAR 2003. And we were doing an endurance race back in the days where we had a quick program. I don't remember what you hit, but it like killed your internet connection. Because the way you did a driver swap was by removing yourself from the server, and then someone else joins with your exact player name. So it tricked the server, kinda. And so we had been doing a couple of endurance races as a team, and then we all realized we lived in the exact same region of Southern California. So it was like an hour drive. And so then we all hooked up for a in-person race. So instead of having to get out and do the whole swap, which you usually lost like a lap and a half or 2 laps doing,
literally
we were just jumping out of the rig and jumping in.
Awesome.
And and so it was 4 of us, and then 3 of the Scott and Terry were the other 2 guys in that team. There were 4 of us, and Terry was actually on the original Sim Racing Tonight episode 1.
Oh,
so
wow.
Me, Darren, and Terry.
I still go back and watch some of those. I'm not gonna lie, it's so crazy.
I trip out when I watch them. Some of them are cringy and really hard to watch, but then again, some of the new stuff's cringy and hard to watch sometimes.
Yeah, but I will tell you though, when people reference the phrase OG, that was OG. That was the original. Like, you guys really were part of what introduced me to sim racing. I won't get into that now, but yeah, that's. I just was curious how you guys. I didn't know if you knew each other before that or whatever, but
just a touch, and only through. And I think maybe that was the kind of the beauty of the magic of it, is that we were exactly what sim racing was all about. We are 2 friends who met through sim racing.
Yeah,
and it was just that unusual situation that we were in that same exact town. or very close by. So and I appreciate you saying that, by the way. I actually get a little emotional, you know.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. I'm never in this kind of scenario with you guys to really ask, and I never know. Like, it's putting that in the comments section or something in the video is dumb. So I just figured I would take advantage and ask because I was genuinely curious.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. What about you, Billy? We'll go on to you. How'd you
man,
get your start?
My age. This is something. All right.
Well, you guys are the two of the most famous guys on here. So
I'm long ago not relevant. So my family has been a racing family, going back to like my grandfather. Like he used to race boats and drag race cars, raced what's called hard tops, like old 32 and 40s, no fenders on dirt tracks, right? And then my dad raced, so he raced flat track motorcycles, modifieds and sprint cars. And at a young age, we didn't have a lot of money, but my dad worked a lot of extra jobs. So he didn't own by the time I was born, he did not own his own race car anymore. He raced for other people. So he didn't have to spend money there, but he could weld, he could rebuild an engine. So that was kind of his contribution to a race team, but we didn't have a lot of money. So what would happen is my dad would, and mom would work extra jobs. And quite often, my parents like video games. So they were part of the arcade and into the Atari and all that. But we always got those things much later than when they first released.
Right.
So at a young age, we were exposed to video games. We would save up our quarters, literally save up our quarters to go to the arcade and play like Monaco GP and like hard driving. Anybody remember hard driving when that came out?
Yeah.
Like it was so terrible, but you were like, this is amazing. It's 3D.
So good.
Yeah.
They still have that in the south of the border, by the way, if anybody wants to play that.
There you go. So, and like I remember one of my first memories, along with my dad getting me my first remote control car, was a grasshopper when I was little. It was like 4 or 5. Is going to an arcade and the stand-up pole position machine. My dad would prop me up on his knee. He would work the throttle and I would steer the car around the track, right? So that's kind of how all this started. We've always loved playing video games in general, and because we were heavy into automotive stuff, we always gravitated towards any racing title. So that's that part.
Right.
The sim racing part didn't come till way later because we couldn't afford to buy a PC. I mean, we bought consoles when they were like half off. So like we couldn't afford to get a PC. And even when I started living on my own, working on my own, I couldn't afford a PC until much, much later. And so I grew up on Gran Turismo and then later on Forza, those games, along with just playing any of the arcade racing games. But GT and Forza was like, that's as real as it was going to get for me.
Yeah.
I played on a gamepad, and then I finally saved up enough money and bought myself a wheel for the 360 for Forza Motorsport 4. We had bought other wheels before that, which weren't any good. So I always stayed away from, anybody know Mad Cats? So I stayed away from that stuff because I always felt like it was, by that time I had gotten to race in something called a quarter midget. I'd never felt like it gave me the feeling of driving a car. So I stayed away from that.
Yeah.
And then finally when I got a Fanatec, you guys can't see it, but it's down here in my little display. I still have it. That was the first time where I was like, oh, this kind of feels like a car. Like, this is kind of fun. And then, Dan mentioned it kind of inadvertently kind of alluded to it with Sean.
Right.
I started watching YouTube in 2010 and was watching Angry Video Game Nerd and watching all the OGs, Total Biscuit and all these people. And I miss Total Biscuit. But watching all the OG YouTubers, and that happened to be, Inside Sim Racing.
Yeah.
And I was watching that stuff and going, man, how do I do this because this is not the same as the thing that I'm playing right now. And I was so jealous of all the
Right.
cool stuff, not only that you guys were playing on Inside Sim Racing, but like the past. I had missed this whole thing of NASCAR Racing 2003, GTR and GTR2, Grand Prix Legends, like all these things that you guys were talking about. And I was like, I was so jealous. And finally, I didn't start really sim racing until 2015.
Okay.
Like actual PC, sim racing until 2015. So that, and by then I had already been racing cars, so then I thought like, well, maybe I have something to contribute to the community because at that point, there wasn't a whole lot of people that had a lot of racing experience
Right.
and were doing sims at the time. And also, I kind of looked at what Sean and Darren did and said, well, if I can kind of talk about it like they talk about it, but come at it from a different angle, like maybe I got something. And that's, so that's kind of how my journey, not only with sim racing, but just into YouTube worked.
Okay. Nice, man.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
we kind of got similar stories, but I'll first go to Dan. Dan, tell us about you. How'd you get your start?
Okay, it's gonna be hard to top that one. Billy did a good job. But one thing I'd say is it's pretty awesome that he told that story because we couldn't be farther from the opposite. So this may come as a surprise to a lot of people, but I'm actually not a motorsport fan. So I am not the type of person that watches other people, except for sim racing. I do watch that, but real world things, I don't really pay that much attention to it if I cannot be involved. So my entire life, I've never really followed motorsport. I actually have learned much more about motorsport in general since I have been sim racing.
Okay.
Now, I am a car nut through and through. Now, where Billy had family that was into cars and racing and stuff, I was the exact opposite of that. My parents could not care less about cars, racing. They were the type of parents that were, be successful, go to school, get a job, pay attention to this. So that's the way I grew up. But because of that, I was pretty fortunate when I got out of school that I had landed a pretty good job and had decent money. So I had played video games like everybody, Forzas, Gran Turismos, all that stuff on consoles for years. And then once I got out in the real world, I started buying and tinkering with real cars and doing autocross, drag racing. I've done a handful of VIRs, my local track. It's a couple hours away. So I've done a handful of just club days, no racing or anything like that. But that was what I lived and breathed. And all that was great until about 2008. So the industry that I work in is a construction, residential-based industry. It's surveying. I'm CAD tech. And so in 2008, the light shut off. I'm sure you guys remember this. So I went from basically being able to buy and drive and do all this fun stuff with real-world cars to overnight not being able to do anything. So what I did is I went out and started trying to figure out, because I had to I ran through a ton of savings very fast. So I had to sell cars, I had to do all this crazy stuff, and all my driving, what I love to do on a daily basis, went away. So I hopped on YouTube and tried to figure out how I could replicate that in a cheaper fashion, and that is how I found you guys, Sean. And that was probably even earlier. It was probably 2009 or something like that. And up until that point, I had never even really known you could get sim racing wheels. I had always played games with controllers and stuff like that. But once I found you guys, dude, I bet I've watched every single video, and I just went all in.
Yep.
And so that's why I have such an interest with you guys, because you were the one and only people that got me the information I needed. And so I'm forever grateful for that, because sim racing hobby has been amazing for me in my life. Now, the reason why I got back out of it a few times is because when the economy goes like this. Yeah. So when the economy slows down and I have less money to do fun things in the real world, I'll jump back into sim racing. And that's kind of what I'll probably do forever. I'm just being honest, so that's how I got into it. And I just kind of went all in. Luckily, even though we had issues with money and all that stuff, I did have a pretty baller PC at the time because of the work I did. So it transitioned into a gaming PC pretty easily. So I just hopped in and did all that. And YouTube, if anybody's curious about that, I accidentally stumbled across YouTube. I made a video long time ago when Thrustmaster's T3PM pedals, the load cell pedals came out. I didn't have them. I just made a random video saying that I didn't believe they were going to ever make them because they talked about them for 8 years.
Right.
And lo and behold, a guy from Thrustmaster was like, "Hey man, these are real. Do you want a set?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm not going to say no. You want to send me something for free? Fuck yeah, send it to me." And I made a review video on it, and it went crazy for whatever reason because it sucked. I go back and look at it, and it's cringy as hell these days. And I said, well, man, if and this is going to sound terrible, but I said, if I can spend a little time doing something I enjoy doing anyways, and these companies are going to send me stuff, I'm going to do it. Right. So YouTube has never been like an avenue for me to try to make money or anything like that. I just test products when people want to send them, and I go on about my business. So that is my long and very boring introduction into sim racing.
That's pretty cool, man.
Didn't you have something else you did on YouTube before that?
Yes. So I kind of keep that secret. So
not here,
thank
buddy.
you for bringing
there are
that
no
up.
secrets
I'm
here.
looking at all. I
so-
know what you did, Dan.
All right. So believe it or not, now my YouTube channel, I do not consider successful right now in the current, way things work. But believe it or not, my YouTube channel used to be much more successful before I was in sim racing. And it was, in fact, this same channel. So when I don't know if you guys remember the YouTube channel High Boost Racing Club. They used to do drag racing and Forza Motorsports and stuff like that back in the day, like roll racing and stuff. They were very popular. Well, I was in that crowd.
Okay.
And this channel used to be called Crazy Dan Productions, which was also a very popular channel that did roll racing. And it just with a controller and stuff. And I had videos that were far more popular, but once I got all into sim racing, I got rid of it. I didn't delete it, but I just made them private because it's kind of different, but that's what I did before. So
I mean, I kind of did something similar. I had these like grand illusions about getting into the industry, and I was trying to review everything I could. It wasn't just racing game related. And again, this is before I did sim racing stuff. So this is back in 2013.
Yeah.
And I was trying to do everything. And then I quickly realized that that was not going to work. And so then I started focusing more on the console racing game stuff. And then then I transitioned to the sim racing after that.
Well, I'll
sim
tell you
racing's
guys.
rather deep to do anything beyond it, really.
Yeah.
And it's getting, and I'm glad. I mean, the more the merrier. I'm not trying to make a career out of this. Sean, you may look at this differently than me, but I think the more people, the merrier. The more eyes on it. We've seen it. The prices have dropped because more people are in it, more competition and stuff, and I love that. The issue that I have from a content creation standpoint is I have this problem my entire life. I jump into things too hard. When I go into something, I go all in. All that shit you can see behind me back there, that is shit that I'm supposed to be reviewing.
But you're here with us, right?
Some of it I bought, but most of it was sent to me. And believe it or not, a lot of people, they reached out to me. Like, I didn't reach out to these people. I reached out to only Thrustmaster. Everything else back there, they reached out to me. And I said yes, like a dumbass. And now I'm having to spend my weekends making fucking content instead of going the hell out and driving my Mini around. But no, I love it. I'm not complaining. Look, I'm not complaining about people sending me stuff. But I think the reason why I'm saying that is I think that people that watch just do not understand how much time is consumed making this kind of stuff. And nobody, no matter how big or small, is making enough money, I believe, at least in this little niche, for it to be worth it. It is very, very difficult. Very difficult.
Yeah. It's a niche hobby. I mean, there are a lot of little niche hobbies that, many a time, the thought of doing something more mainstream has occurred to me, right? And being more general gaming, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but number one, it's just going into a much deeper pool of that many more talented individuals creating content. And it's even just going outside my comfort zone, right? So I'd now be kind of like being a poser. And yeah, it was like, well, it might not lead to riches, but it's the hobby I love, and I enjoy playing with all this gear. And, that's the other cool thing about sim racing as a content guy. Hardware keeps you backed up all day long. You don't even get to software. If you're in the general gaming world, it's like, well, all it is just different game after game after
Yeah.
game, and I think we're at a great point where most of the gear we get is really high end and really not. I don't mean high end like expensive. I mean
Mm-mm.
most of it is troubleshot.
Right.
So even the lesser expensive gear is still quality gear. And versus if I was just doing general gaming, it's like, wow, I downloaded I don't know, last Steam sale, I think I bought like 5 or 10 games,
Yeah.
and maybe play 1 or 2 of them, beyond just trying them out, and it just seems like so full of not fun stuff to do versus the stuff I play with is super duper fun to play with. Anyway, all right.
Hey,
Right, Amir.
really quick, not to tangent, but I've got one more question for you, and then I'll shut the hell up, Sean. How do you feel about, because you are the OG here, you are the one in this little group of people that have been doing this for ancient years. How do you feel about these channels that
You're just
have
in everything?
it's not that we can do anything about it, but I'm just curious your real consensus on the fact that what is happening, at least what I'm seeing right now, is there are a lot of smaller, quote unquote, car YouTube channels that, when I say small, have 100, 200,000, 300,000. That's small in that grand scheme of things, are moving over to sim racing, where overnight they become a very large fish in our sea. And I feel like we're just trickling lower and lower to the bottom because that's happening. Now, it doesn't affect me because I'm not trying to make money with this, but I'm curious, someone from your aspect, because you are genuine, you need this. This is your career, right? I mean,
Sure.
so I'm curious how you feel about that kind of scenario, because it is happening for sure.
For me, it's a double-edged sword for sure. So, one, they're bringing more audience, more eyes, more attention to sim racing. So even if they're only converting 3, 5, 10%, when you look at their size, their audiences, cool. That's a lot more potential sim racers. Because to this day, and one of the reasons we started doing shows was it actually kind of bothered me when I'd be at work talking to some dude who's telling me about the NASCAR race or the IndyCar race, and I'm like, dude, have you ever tried sim racing? He's like, what the F is that? And I'm like, oh, we're on our computers, and they just scoff it off. And I'm like, you'd understand the race you're watching so much better if you understood what it was like to do it in some way, shape, or form, And that always really, really aggravated me. So conversion has always been one of my agendas. So I appreciate that side. And I don't mind them creating content, and I think the ones that are doing it just to do it will be exposed for what they're doing to the intelligent. And those who are posers, as I said I would be if I started doing Call of Duty shows, right? I'm fodder on a battlefield map, so I have no business doing a show unless it's just that, old guy who sucks. And so I think that they'll be exposed if they're real deal and they get in and they're legit, then that's cool. Bring it on. Now, what I don't like is to shows like us, it actually means it puts us one more down the pecking order when it comes to access to things. I'm not talking viewers, because I think of viewers as more like, hey, you earn your viewers a lot more than you do access to the industry. And so, yeah, and then usually they're funding. So access is two parts. One, their ability to go to things and cover things that I can't afford to do. Like PRI. I should have gone to PRI this year. There's a lot of sim racing going on, but I don't have the budget to fly to Indy and put myself up in a hotel to get one show. And then the amount of views that I'd get on that one show. It's just not worth it. It's not even worth the time, let alone the money. However, it was great content, but I can't afford it. Whereas I saw a couple of I know exactly the types of shows you're talking about, because that's where I actually specifically saw some coverage of, and they're covering and then they had front row access because they were bringing a much larger community. So when they called in and said, hey, we're coming, it was the red carpet. But
nothing gives me a facepalm more than seeing one of those channels review something and I hate to say it, but I don't even understand what the hell they're saying, because it doesn't make any sense to me, because it's not, they're obviously not knowledgeable. And then I don't see you getting to review that product. That doesn't make sense to me. Why? I get it from a monetary standpoint for the company, but they're doing themselves a disservice.
Yeah, it's all a
I think.
marketing arm, right? That's
I
what
know. Yeah.
they've used everybody anyways.
Yeah.
Well,
It's so crazy.
now I'm not going to make any fans in the industry here, but I think it's twofold to that too. I think most companies would prefer dealing with those kind of places because I'm not going to say there's an agreement amongst companies or a conspiracy, but that these are
No, I love
companies that are known
conspiracies.
for
Bring it on.
always. I think
We
they're
want 'em
mostly
all.
companies that are always known for being super duper favorable.
Right.
Yeah.
And just and being softball. Let's just not even favorable. Let's just call it softball. I think
All that
modern
access journalism.
yeah, and I think that most companies are shying away from that. You know, when a company can put up and this is a big difference of we'll never get to our topics.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
No,
for
no, this is
derailing
what
you.
it's all
I'm so
about,
sorry.
man. This is what it's all about. When we first started, because of the novelty of what we were given the red carpet treatment to everything because we were the only one who was even caring. You know, the big game shows didn't care about sim racing games. You know, they weren't selling titles. Oh, where was I going with this whole point? I'm sorry.
I don't know.
I'm sorry. I lost my train of thought here.
I think you were just
oh.
talking about how not as much access because
Yeah.
of
Well, I'll use iRacing as an example. So back
Mhm.
then, iRacing couldn't get a view on YouTube if they paid for it. So they would go to Inside Sim Racing because we had a huge following for our niche industry, and they'd get lots of views. It was worth the gamble of anything negative we might even say because the exposure
Yeah.
was still worth it. Now, if iRacing can put a video out that gets more views than me, and more importantly, the public, and I'm sorry, iRacing, I should have just said ABC company because it doesn't matter. I could be talking about ABC steering wheel company.
Right.
If they can put a video out that can rival the YouTuber's opinion, and the consumers will buy it. See, this is the thing. I see it on hardware and software. They put out a promotional video made by the people who have a vested interest in you buying it. I have no vested interest in anyone buying anything. Okay. And people pre-order the hardware or the game based on the promotional marketing of this company. Ever since that dynamic became normal, I think they were like, hey, why do we even deal with YouTubers and these people with opinions? And so now I'm not even sure if it's numbers as much
That's exactly why people stop sending me stuff.
I've literally been told that.
Yeah.
You're
I have
too much
never
of a
heard
wild card.
you say anything negative, Billy. Not once in my life.
Never.
Yeah, has it?
Never.
Maybe once. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I try to walk a very fine line. You know, I try to put a pretty spin on things. Even if I have negative, I'll try to be a little sugarcoating, of course. And that's an attempt to kind of walk that fine line. And Amir and I talked about this yesterday on the show, but it's like, hey, I'm not going to give you my opinion, but hopefully I'm going to tell you the detail that lets you formulate yours so that I don't have to be the bad guy saying the words that I can then be held accountable by the vendors for. Right. But it was said enough. Yeah, I'll leave that to Billy. So, all right.
Man. So,
Amir,
yo,
Amir, give it to us.
Oh,
yeah.
Me. Okay.
Yeah.
Come on, buddy.
For me, I'm kind of like a mix between Dan and Billy. So, growing up, I'm the parents of immigrants. So, like growing up when we didn't have a lot of money, we didn't have a lot of, we didn't have a lot of access to buy and do fun things. So, it wasn't until most of the times it was going to the arcades. My mom would like, hey, here's $1, go play at the arcade. So I'd get into like pole position and waste my $1, playing 4 rounds of pole position back then. It wasn't until where my friend ended up getting the original PlayStation, and he had Gran Turismo. But before then, like I used to watch a lot of car racing, even though my family didn't like cars. They were not on cars at all, but I was watching races. And into a drawing the cars and everything, having like all the pictures hanging on my wall and everything. But he ended up getting Gran Turismo, and we were trying it out. I'm like, holy crap! Like, you can drive a Nissan Skyline in here? Like, like that's the holy grail. It was like, for me, it was the R32 Nissan Skyline. To me, that's like my holy grail of cars. Like, I can drive it in this game. Like, holy crap! And from there, I was hooked onto it. Later on, my parents, I think like I finished 9th grade, they got me a secondhand PC, and one of the games I was able to get was Papyrus's IndyCar game back then. And from there, like, holy crap, I'm like in an IndyCar driving an open wheeler, and yeah, again, hooked onto that. From there, I transitioned to the Formula One games on the original PlayStation. And then once I finished high school in 2000, because I was living overseas, and I moved back to the States, starting dirt poor again, trying to work 3 jobs, going to college. I didn't have time for gaming or anything like that. It wasn't until like a couple years after I joined the military was when I got another gaming system. I was able to get into racing again. And I think it was like with Gran Turismo 3, I bought the Logitech DFGT wheel. And at this point, I didn't know anything but really on the internet. I didn't know anything about YouTube. I wasn't doing any of that stuff. I was just like, I worked, I gamed, and that was it. Like, I was back then, my thought process was like, why am I going to waste my time watching other people and stuff on YouTube? Because it wasn't even then, like, I want to game.
Sure.
And I think it was like in 2016, I was like on YouTube, and I saw like DIY rig build, like the pipe, whatever. I can't remember. It was on Inside Sim Racing. It was Sean building the freaking pipe rig.
Oh yes,
The simulator
Yep.
PVC.
The PVC
plan.
pipe rig, and I'm like,
Was he wearing the overalls? Was that the one?
Yes. And
That will go down in history for sure.
I mean, it wasn't strictly solely for Sean, because you had a beautiful lady that on there too.
I wasn't gonna mention.
I know.
I wasn't gonna mention that part. Look, she made me all choked up, anyways.
Right?
She was not wearing overalls, I can tell you that.
But
was
really,
she?
like, because at first, like, I didn't know anything about sim rigs. I just knew, like, oh, you got the Logitech GFTT, you hook it up to your desk, and you race that way. Like, I knew nothing about sim rigs or anything like that. I never knew people went that crazy with the stuff, and like seeing this guy building a PVC pipe and all happy and excited, I'm like, this guy's like really awesome. Like, he's so happy about doing his job, and like and exciting, and like, enthralled and everything like that. I'm like, I want to start doing this stuff. And I watched a couple more videos, because he built like a Deathmobile. You know, doing like the Rick Motec RS1 rig.
Oh yeah, those plans too. Yeah.
And then I think like a year later or so, or 6 months later, I can't remember. Like, you ended up making your own Simpit channel. I'm like, oh, that's the guy from ISR. I wonder where he went, because all of a sudden, like, I was watching Sean, and then it transitioned to Billy.
Yep. It was no. That's actually not.
Well, I kind of stopped then, but like,
John
I
Sable,
stopped watching.
Okay.
I watched, because I was so backlogged on all this stuff. Like, I saw Sean's videos, and I saw Billy's videos. I'm like, what happened to Sean? Like, he was such a nice, cool guy. Like, Billy's really cool too. Like, 'cause he's got that voice, that commanding presence. Like, so I enjoyed your content too. But like, and I didn't know all the stuff that was going on behind the scenes or any of that stuff. But then I saw Sean with the Simpit, and then he had a Discord, so I ended up joining the Discord, and yeah, from there getting into iRacing and all this stuff. Buying my own rig, and then eventually, working behind the scenes with Sean, into now like being, front and center on the camera with you guys. So like, it's been a pretty cool rad journey. Yeah. So like, essentially, like, yeah, it was Sean, Billy, Darren, John Sable, like the original, all the ISR guys that really got me into sim racing. So
And
it was
Jessica.
pretty cool. And yes,
And
of course,
Jessica,
I
so
cannot
you gotta-
discount her
yeah.
at all. I mean, maybe she was.
Does anybody keep in contact with John, by the way? Does anybody talk to
I
him?
talked to him, messaged him a while ago, and then I think we had a Twitter exchange maybe.
He got completely out of everything, right? No sim racing, no
Yeah.
content creation.
Yeah, not to speak for John, but John he kind of did the same thing that I did. Look, if people didn't realize this, Inside Sim Racing got sold to a completely separate entity.
Yeah.
And their idea was they didn't really care about the video stuff at the time. They were really into the website stuff. And that was how they were. I'm not going to say who it is because I never got told who it was. I can only make a very good educated guess, so I'm not going to say it. But that's how they were going to sell product.
Mm-hmm.
Was that way. And I think John and I, independently, we didn't even talk about this, but we kind of came to our own conclusion, and this very similar conclusion. And that's why, like, when I left, I didn't even say anything. I didn't, and maybe that was not the smartest move ever, but I just didn't want the complications that came from that. And then John left shortly after because he got an offer. He started looking. He got an offer from Boeing at the time.
Mhm.
And, that's where he came from.
Yeah.
He was an engineer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that industry is where he came from. So, he was big into, like Star Fox was saying, I think most of us were at some point Gran Turismo, console plebs, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think John was like Gran Turismo 4, but he was really into IndyCar, and then he started doing the sim racing stuff, and he watched ISR. He was, I think, at one point he might have started doing blogs or something. Anyway, that kind of worked.
He was doing that first.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
and he was doing that first. Yeah,
that was, there was the Jason era, if anybody remembers that.
Yep.
And then we had John, and then I twice actually had sent something into Inside Sim Racing. So in between Jason and John, I had sent something to Darren because Darren had mentioned he was looking for somebody. I'm like, I could do this.
I got this. I'm Billy Dan Train.
At the time, there was no way. So that was the right call. That he ended up getting John in, and then later on, when I actually started really kind of not hitting my stride, but just getting a better understanding of how YouTube worked and what was going on, then I sent again something in just to see if anybody was curious, because I like the collab thing. I like having conversations. That's my favorite part of this whole thing of YouTube, is having the conversations, and that's why I'm really enjoying live stream. Like, it used to stress me out. It doesn't stress me out anymore. And I really like having the conversations in the live streams, and then like, doing collabs where it's so much easier to like bounce ideas off of people and stuff like that. So that's when again, John, I think it was John or maybe Darren said, "Hey, we're looking for somebody to add to the team that can do blank." I'm like this.
Yeah.
And then that's how I ended up doing it. I just got rejected, and then I tried again.
But yeah, it does no consumer any good to only have one viewpoint.
No.
I think to have an
Totally agree.
accurate description of anything, you have to have two people, preferably that are different in opinions. I mean, that's the right way to do it, I think. And that's what makes YouTube very hard. That's why I am scared a lot of times making review content like that, because I try to be as unbiased as I can, but it's only my opinion. And in the grand scheme of things,
Well,
I'm
we're
only
all going to be biased to a degree anyways.
Yeah, yeah. But
when people say unbiased, I think it's a misnomer. What they're really trying to say is they're trying to be as objective as they possibly can while taking into account the biases. And that's why, I know Dan, everybody here, use us as a barometer. Do you agree with me on these certain things? Then when I'm talking about something like that, then you can go like, oh, well, if Sean likes this thing and now he's talking about this thing that's a similar thing, and I agree with him usually on those things, then I know I'm going to like this product.
Right.
Or if I think differently than Sean or any of us, like, that's how I've always viewed it. It doesn't come across like that all the time, but that's the goal.
Yeah.
Well, I think that if you're referring to like the people who were commenting on your one video, I mean, those people are going to shine the loudest no matter what.
Oh, it does. Yeah,
Most
I've had that
people-
forever. That doesn't matter.
Yeah, most people are gonna be like, "Oh, damn, this guy kind of knows what he's talking about," or whatever, but they're not going to comment that. It's going to be the other people who are like, what the hell is this guy talking about? Is he crazy? That's just the way it is.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well,
the 2-person thing is so awesome. I agree 100% because again, and maybe even 3, right? Because the more the merrier to an extent until it got overwhelming. But and the beauty for Inside Sim Racing was the fact that we were again in the same proximity. So like right now, there's nothing that I could wish more that most of the vendors would be nice enough to send both me and Amir the same product at the same time so that we could collaborate. And sure, on software we make that happen or will be in the moving forward. But it's logistically like we still, even though we have 2 guys that we could literally do exactly that, but it's just so hard. And even if I were to delay things, so let's say we're not getting everything pre-release, right? So it's not an embargo date type situation. It's like, okay, well, I could still send it to Amir, but I mean, he lives, $30 to $200 shipping away. So yeah, it's. I wish that somehow we'll make that happen.
Who will?
If our channel was double the size, we'd probably start to see that happening.
I just got to convince you to
well,
move to
hopefully it
Germany.
will soon. I mean, I think it will soon. You guys have made some pretty nice changes, and I think that I hope that you'll see like a very upward trajectory, and it'll keep on rolling. Somebody just turned something on very loud
for years, but yes.
Can y'all hear that thing that someone just turned something on outside? I can close my window if I need to.
No,
not really.
You're good.
No, you're good, man.
I can't,
right, cool.
Dan, I can't hear you at all.
Really? I've got nothing good to say, so that's fine.
All right. Oh man, not to get away, man. Just to keep us on topic so we can stay on time. But I'm gonna get into our first topic of the night. And this is me, you, and Billy. We've kind of talked about this on your live streams a little bit, and you've chatted quite a bit about it on your live streams. And getting into AI in sim racing, how do you guys feel about it in its current state? Like, do you think we're at a good point where AI is in the sim titles that are out there right now, the popular ones, or do you still think there's a lot of work that needs to be made to make sure that people can still have a really good offline experience while they're sim racing?
You guys go first.
Billy, I think you should go first on this one.
Well, I'm talking about this ad nauseum. I'm curious what you guys think, and then I'll follow up.
Go ahead, Dan. You go first, buddy.
Okay, so AI for me is very important, but it is not important for it to be perfect. So the older I get, the less I want to do like online gaming and real competitive stuff. So I can only really play games that have decent AI, and really all I care is that they don't drive off the track. I'm not super picky about it. I just want to be able to have other bodies on the track with me that aren't completely crashing me off, and that I don't have to listen to real 12-year-olds in an actual lobby. So I think that it's important. I think that, and who am I really? But I do think that for the most part, even the worst AI is pretty good to me. Like I hear people all the time complaining about the old Assetto Corsa AI, and I use it all the time. It's fine. But look, I'm not really picky with that kind of stuff, so I may not really be the right person to answer this question because, I mean, for me, I think it's just fine. Can it be better? Sure. But I'm not the kind of person that will like dive into those files like Billy will and stuff like that. And so I think he's the one that probably is going to know more about that than me for sure.
Okay. Going on to you, Sean.
I think for the way that now this is, again, we have 4 people here. We all have our own reasons, our own, right? I think for the way that I actually use AI, it works totally fine. So, and like Dan said, could it be better? Yeah. I mean, we could do hours on what's wrong and how many things are wrong, even in the best version of AI. But I don't necessarily think it's the fault of the sim companies. Like this is, we're asking for rain. It's like this is a tricky one. AI is not that basic a concept, I don't think. But like for me, being able to, like in training, for example, just for those who are new to sim racing, I think they really need just something to go bounce literally around on the track with, and not be the people causing nightmares and giving sim racing a bad rap. Because if all they do is charge into a public room and knock everyone off the track, then everyone's like, oh, all these public lobbies suck. And it's like, well, it might be a guy who literally picked up the controller yesterday and doesn't know. And so, like, spatial awareness. If you're going to make a pass on the inside, how much earlier do you have to brake to hold the line? It forces you to drive the non-qualifying line,
Right.
which makes you a real racer, not just a hot lapper. So I think it's really important. Now, for me, I don't use AI at all unless I'm trying to get B-roll for the show, because it's a lot easier to race against the AI and create scenarios than it is to get a bunch of humans to cooperate with me exactly how I want them to on a public server. So if I want a crowd, if I want to crash, whatever, AI does it magically. So I mean, I was just running against AI literally this morning, not even joking, and I was running in iRacing, and it put a weird random grid together with the driver percentages were kind of all over the place, so the qualifying order made no real sense based on the speed of the drivers, and I was able to just like push people off the track, get out of my way. As long as it was getting off the corner, any level of cutting them off, they yielded so quickly that I'm like, oh my God, no one would let me get away with this in real life.
Right.
So it's like, okay, and then the last thing I'll say, and I'll shut up. A lot of time, I think AI is a lot better if you just play by the rules. Like if you act like touching them is a cardinal, error. Like we try to not actually have contact in racing for the most part. So I think if you observe proper race etiquette, that you get a really decent AI racing experience out of most. Even, I mean, we could be talking Forza even, which yes, Forza will run you over under braking going into corners. It's a nightmare. But once things get pretty settled out, you actually can get a pretty good race if you respect them, and they will, for the most part, respect you once things get sorted out. So yeah, I think it has certainly potential. But yeah, Joe had just mentioned the AI. Like we did an IndyCar race.
Yeah.
And the AI ruined everything all race long. Like they just couldn't grasp the concept of the way that race works.
Which game was that?
iRacing.
iRacing.
Yeah, but that was very specific to the IndyCar, and I can't remember what track we were at. We were at a fast oval. Might have been, I don't remember.
Oh, you guys were at Texas, I believe.
Yeah, it might have been Texas. But they just, all sorts of problems. But again, I did a road race this morning, and it was like, look at this. Once I got into fourth place, fifth was right on my butt, and third didn't really want to yield too easily. And then, I could have fooled everyone into thinking it was real racing if I took video.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, and I think we were like, I don't think AI's like some Sims AI's in a pretty good spot. I want to say like in a great spot, but in a good spot. And other Sims, not so great. And I think probably for me, I think like the last title that had like a really good AI was, I would say, probably GTR 2. And since then, like I don't really see like much progress since then. That's been years and years. But I think AI is important, and the reason I think it's important, I would argue it's more important than this iRacing Rain update that's coming out, is one you were talking about, Sean. Like it helps teach you racing techniques. It helps teach you situational awareness when you're out on the track, because when you're racing, I mean, you can sit there and hot lap on a track by yourself, but you're racing the perfect line the whole entire time. You're not. But when you're in an actual race, like you're going to get thrown off the racing line. You're going to have to do passes or maneuvers off the race line, or be put in these kind of situations where you're just not ideal anymore. And so like when I'm playing some games where you see the AI racing in a line and they're just not doing anything, or just like the snake trail. I don't think that's really acceptable in today's age of gaming. Like, come on, like I'm not saying you have to make the AI perfect, but make it in a way where they sort of do behave like humans. And that's where I kind of like the AMS2 AI, or even like iRacing's AI, because you can sit there and customize the sliders or add the different values to where like you can have a really fast, clean driver, or you can, if you want to make a copycat of Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton, like you can make those in those titles, which is really cool because now you're having to not also, you know, you're not learning how to race against other people, but now you're kind of racing against like other drivers, and you can learn how those drivers are going to behave in those certain instances, like where like, oh, I'm coming up against Joe Schmo. He always spins out in this corner or takes out 20 people. Like, all right, I got to stay away from him. Whereas I think like a lot of titles kind of gotten away from the AI. Now they're focusing too much on the multiplayer aspect, when there still is a large group of the community that only does offline racing, and I don't think they get the kind of experience that the multiplayer guys get because they're strictly doing the single player stuff. So I think that's it. I think the AI in some of the sims, like I say, like AMS2 iRacing is really, really good, especially if you play around with the values and stuff. You can make them be pretty amazing. Whereas, like, I'd say, like, Assetto Corsa, Project Cars, R Factor 2, all those, like, I think they're really lacking when it comes to the AI, especially with nowadays with AI taking over the world. Like, there shouldn't be an excuse about why AI can't be great.
I'm also sure that's the same thing.
Yeah. Anyways, that's me. That's all you, Billy.
All right, here we go.
All right,
I'm ready.
I'll try to make this as succinct as possible. Jump in at any point. I think context is important when we talk about things like AI.
Yeah.
Back in NASCAR Racing 2003 and GTR2, the reason that those things had good AI because there was no real good alternative, right? Racing against a human was a novelty, and quite often it didn't work well. But they made those sims with the capability of having good online racing as well.
Yeah.
That's why they're so revered in a larger, in a 40,000 foot view. Those are kind of the gold standard because at that time you had to have good AI because not everybody could race online. Right. So we were progressing. I mean, I've been playing Gran Turismo 3 on Twitch. Streaming that, and yeah, the AI's terrible. But at the time, again, context, it was okay. Yeah, it was annoying that they could, do things that you couldn't do, or they would slam into you. They'd try to stay on their line, but then sometimes they'd give you room, and then you're like, oh, that was cool. Did you see what and then they'd try to pass each other, right? So there's an evolution there to 2K NASCAR Racing 2003, GTR2. I think once the public really accepted racing online in this hobby, everybody was like, I don't know why anybody would want to race an AI. This is silly. So then resources slowly migrated the other direction towards online competition, and rightfully slow. So, because I think rightfully slow. I think at that point, you had a bunch of people that were very connected into the experience that they wanted. Again, sim racing at that time, when I go and again, I wasn't there, but when I go back and look at not only what people were saying, but the products that were being produced, you had a fairly small amount of people, and they all kind of wanted the same experience, right? It was, you kind of wanted to role play, but with real humans to get that excitement and variety, and then you could bench race with your buddy, and you could I've had great experiences, even, myself racing online with other people, and I will credit, again, the Simpit for making me a better driver. Because of the way people raced when I was participating in there. Like I had to figure it out. I thought I was okay, and then I got in. I'm like, oh, I'm getting my ass kicked. I need to change the way I'm driving, and it made me a better driver. So that's the benefits of online. But the unfortunate part is we kind of lost any development
Mhm.
of AI along the way. So it's been stagnant for an incredible amount of time.
Yeah.
We talk about Assetto Corsa AI. Did you know this is where I don't understand sim racing developers in the fact that iRacing did the smartest thing they possibly could when they were like, we're developing an online racing sim.
Mhm.
That's what we're doing. And that's what they focused on, and they did it really well.
Yeah.
Then you had a lot of these other developers say, we're going to do everything.
Yep.
We're going to do it all. It's still a sandbox idea, but we're doing all of it.
It's kind of like that
And
I was gonna say it's kind of like that golden thing where like they want to be like the jack of all trades, but like a master of
Stretching
nothing.
themselves too far.
Yeah.
Yep.
I will say, kind of on
Excuse me.
what you just said, Billy, as someone who primarily only races with AI, and I have basically from the beginning, in my short period of time that I've been in, relatively short, in sim racing, not that they've gotten worser, they've actually gotten better, but there is a less importance on actually AI in general. As time has progressed, the developers have just spent less and less time really caring about it, at least from my experience. And I think that contributes to them being less important. Because am I like the only person here besides Billy that actually consistently races with AI? You know what I mean? That's
what I really enjoyed about everybody's answer was there's a progression. I can see the progression from somebody, Dan, you admit that you are not a motorsport person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sean's from an era where, like myself, we were offline focused, and then he moved to online because that's the new thing. That's the thing that's going to propel, and like Star Fox is saying, kind of giving you what you ever wished AI could do. You got what you were getting from humans.
Yeah.
And then Amir's kind of like this mix, and then I'm definitely more AI focused, even though I enjoy racing online. I don't view it the same though as a lot of other people because I was fortunate enough to race a lot in the real world, and I don't need to. My experience does not focus that hard racing against other people. So when I race against other people, I want to win. I want a good race too.
Mhm.
Like I don't care about setting up the car. Like to me, part of being a driver is the ability to adapt and try to figure it out on the fly. Like, and coming especially from a dirt racing background, that's all you do. You're constantly moving more so than you would on an oval or on a road course. And I've done all of that. So we've missed this opportunity to develop AI in a way that could give us the experience that we're looking for either way. And so when we talk about Assetto Corsa, this is where I was kind of talking about is they don't view a lot of those things important enough for you to mess with. If you want to mess with it, you need to go into the INI files. Like Assetto Corsa can actually have decent AI. But you have to redo all the corridors and everything. And who wants to sit there and do that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Because when you readjust the corridors, they actually perform much better than they do stock out of the box. But I'm saying in relative terms, nobody wants to go through that effort, and it's like that was put in there, and Stefano actually put in quite a bit of work to the AI, because if you remember in the very beginning, I'm just using AC as an example, it was real bad.
Yeah.
Like in the beginning, AC was super bad, and they made it better. They put an aggression slider in there and that kind of thing. But this is kind of like a universal thing. Some James, I think, mentioned, let me see, R Factor 2. Yeah, R Factor 2 got worse.
Yep.
With the Sebring update, broke the AI. They said nothing's changed.
Used to be pretty good.
Exactly. RF2 used to have the best AI available.
Yep.
Back in the day. And then they broke it. So we've just gone through a period where people don't invest that much in AI. What was telling to me is when iRacing said, hey, we're going to start doing AI. Because Stefano had made a comment towards the end of life for AC in one of his live streams that people were like, why do you even bother messing and developing AI? Like, nobody plays it. And he's like, our data says there's 50% of people actually
I'm one of them.
Yeah. And so Now, it might have lessened even more since then, but I think it's actually picked up more steam.
Yeah.
And I'm getting back to like what's great is the difference in everybody's perspective on AI here. AI is great for the person that A, can't get online when
Yep.
his buddies are online, B, that wants to race something that is not popular, or C, the racing nerd in us, the motorsport nerd in us,
Yep.
wants to put themselves in a scenario that they'll never be able to do in
Yep.
real life. They're trying to reproduce a series or a race, and that's where AI really falls apart, because we should have systems that if somebody wants to try AI, but they don't want to be bothered with messing with all the sliders and the stupid stuff like I do, you should have some sort of like trainer preset. You should have a realistic preset, and you should have a chaos preset.
Yeah.
Right? You get, and that gets people into the action the way they want to be raced. AI can be pushovers. AI can give you a really stiff but fair challenge. They're going to give you room, but they're not going to give you a whole lot of room. They're going to be aggressive, but not overly aggressive. And then if you want the Pastor Maldonado experience, you go, you do this over here, where they take every dive bomb and every block possible, and they make your life a living hell. And it's a challenge just to survive the race, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the things we need. And where right now, I think, to Amir's point, is that AMS2 and iRacing have great online components. The problem is, I can't tell you how many times I listened to somebody go, well, it sucks because they're pushovers. Don't mean Sean was saying this. I'm just saying in general, it sucks because they're pushovers, or they ram into the back of you, or they're just not fast enough for everything. That's because most people are taking them at default values,
Right.
and then just racing with them. Because again, there's a very small select group of us talking to the that want that type of experience and are willing to go to that depth. I mean, I'm making AMS2 files for people that want out of my Discord that they can pull and just drop into their own, because I know what a pain in the ass this is to set up. By the time you go through everything, you've burned yourself out.
This is a perfect example, and I wanted to say this earlier, but I didn't want to interrupt you. I did not know I love AMS2. I've been trying to get Billy to play AMS2 for like 19 years, and I only play with AI, and I did not know until yesterday on Billy's stream that there was an additional way to adjust the AI. I did not even know that until literally yesterday. I've been playing that game forever. So I think that if the developers could just do all of them, not just AMS2, just do a better job letting people know that those features are available. Because if I didn't know they were there, ain't nobody else going to know. Because I promise you, I play more AI racing than most. Not everybody, but most. So if I didn't know it was there, most people don't know it was there.
Yeah.
So,
No, I'm super happy about it. I mean, like, especially with AMS2, I used to do it in AC, where like for me, I'm a huge Formula One fan, and I grew up. I joined and started watching Formula One with Ayrton Senna, Michael Schumacher, Damon Hill, all these guys. And back then when playing F1 94 on the PlayStation, like I'd always pick Michael Schumacher because I want to relive those moments, and started doing that in AC, but again, like the AI wasn't that great. But now seeing like AMS2, you're pointing that out, like I can do that now in AMS2, and there are people that are making mods for previous, for these old years. It's amazing.
I love it.
I love that stuff for like the motorsport nerds, like
exactly.
you and me, Billy. Like, holy crap, I can go back and relive, be a part, have that feeling of being a part of that season. I'm like, yes, racing against my childhood heroes.
And even though I am not a fan of that, I still have an appreciation for that being available for those of you. You know what I mean? Like just because it's not something I want to use, I still think that's awesome. Like sometimes I have to Google what Amir is talking about like literally when you're talking about Formula One and stuff like that and all these names, I have to go on Google and figure it out just to be involved.
Yeah.
But I am super glad that that stuff is available for you guys. And even if I don't know who those people are, it's still fun for me to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I appreciate all that stuff for sure.
And to that point, I'm always a person that you know, understands that developers have, and I've worked with developers. Like I've stated this before. I helped iRacing with their dirt content. I worked hand in hand with the guys that were literally making all the value changes and working and dialing those cars in. There's a couple that I can't talk about. One project that I'll never see the light of day, which is kind of funny. Maybe someday I'll get comfortable enough with the NDA that I can talk about that. But what's scope and scale. And I understand that having every option on the planet, whether it's online, offline racing, setups, whatever, is not feasible. But I wish that the scope and scale was always more tailored to which thing are you going to do. And my point, I'll never forget when ACC was coming out. And by the way, I did an event for ACC when they debuted ACC to the world at E3. Sean went. I was there doing, helping with doing work for ACC and Thrustmaster. And I'll never forget when they were talking about this, and somebody in a chat, when they did like a live stream, had mentioned, are there going to be like breakdowns and car damage? If you crush a curb too hard and all this. And they kind of just said, why would you want that? Because they're thinking about it in an online aspect,
Right.
But yet you have an offline mode. So the person that was really interested in ACC from an offline perspective, right? They're thinking you're going to deliver them an experience that's what they want.
Yeah.
If your focus, though, is online, then just do online. Just do the online thing.
Yep.
So, and that's, I think, what's kind of been the frustrating part is that they don't want to get rid of the offline because they know that there is a sizable, maybe
they
not
want those
majority, but a
buyers.
sizable portion of people that want to do that, but they don't want to put the resources into making it good.
Mm-hmm.
They just kind of they look at it from a multiplayer perspective and go, well, why would you want to do that? Why would you want those things? And you're missing kind of the fun of that AI part. And like to Amir's point, getting to do the motorsport and nerd stuff. And to Dan's point, Dan doesn't really know all that stuff. But again, that's where my presets come in.
Yeah.
Dan doesn't need to know all those things. He just goes, I want this easy. And I'm not talking about difficulty level. I'm talking the type of experience you want, because you can you would still be able to adjust the level, right? I'm talking the type of experience that you want. Do you want easy? Do you want it so where they're a pushover? Do you want a good, like, pro driver, not online experience, but like a pro driver race? Or do you want chaos? 'Cause some people like the memes. Some people like to just screw around and see what kind of chaos happens. I get it. It's not me. I don't like that stuff, but some people do. There's not a reason not to have these options. And that's what I've always argued for, is even if it's an option I don't want, to Dan's point, if somebody includes it and does it right, I'm happy that it's there for those people that want to use it. And I kind of feel like AI in its current state is only just getting started again.
Yeah.
To really really get even acceptable. I'm not even going to say good, just acceptable. I've had some of my most fun times right now is with AMS2 AI. But I've gone in and messed with all that stuff. Same thing with iRacing. And the fact that we can do multiplayer in iRacing. We did a stock car league for me last year. That was a blast. Like, it was so much fun when we did the 87 Cup cars with AI. But that's because I could sit there and we could put the real skins on the cars, and I went through, and I'm a nerd. I went through all the attributes of each race for each driver that was going to be the AI, and try to give them their real stats so we get like somewhat of a realistic race. And then we were racing with those cars too. And it was some of the most fun I've ever had.
Yeah.
That's what AI is good for too, like field filler stuff. As long as it doesn't, murder you on an oval like it did Sean, like, and that's the frustrating thing. Somebody gets that experience and says AI sucks. AI does terrible, that kind of thing. I'm not saying Sean said this because Sean knows better, but I'm just saying in general, I feel like, AMS can also do the online racing, although they have a weird thing with their wheels. It looks funny, but anyway, those types of experiences can be a very big deterrent. And I think it's just because we've let AI sit stagnant for so long. And I hear it all the time. why would you want to race against an AI when humans are the ultimate thing? And I'm like, well, yes, if you're looking at it from a pure competition perspective, which I get.
Have you
Again,
seen the
they're like,
endurance
"Dan-"
races lately? About
Right.
I think though, Billy, there's very few of us who
Yeah.
we completely agree on what you're saying there. But I think in the general scheme, the grand scheme, there's very few people out there. We may be the only 2 or 3 that are actually that concerned with it. I think most people are probably, if you took a poll, a general poll of what actual consumers, the end user, wanted, most people I think would say online at this time. And so we just get buried way down in the noise.
I would say that was probably the case up until about 2, maybe 3 years ago.
Yeah.
There's a reason that iRacing decided
For
to
sure.
do AI. It makes business sense because you can, again, go race something like, to Sean's point, like a training. You can use AI because you get to race something that everybody else doesn't race. And they wouldn't be putting significant development into that if the user base wasn't there, because that's just burning resources for zero return. So I would say, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that getting back to the 2 to 3 years, you know, when you look at like sports games in the console world, AI is essential. But when you look at the shooter world, like there was this whole thing where like none of the games came with career mode or AI or any of that stuff, or it was so scaled down to what the originals. You know, I played some you know, I can't even remember shooter game.
007.
Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Good one.
GoldenEye.
Yeah, but they all went Rainbow Six. That's what I used to. That was the original one for me. And that was like only a story mode, career mode, playing against AI. And then they all went online. Like you'd buy a game and it had like no single player missions. But now I am seeing that like the latest gen seem to be getting back to some of that. And I think that's sort of timed in that same time span that Billy's talking about. And then the other thing I'm going to add to this, and I don't know much when it comes to software and coding or any of that. That's nothing I know anything about. But like I know when we first got into laser scanning, how like iRacing was sending a truck around, you know, whatever. And then we got to a point where like, oh, this is something we're going to have companies that will do independent scans, share it with all sims. It's universal, right? And so now I'm looking at, and this is where I'm really intrigued with the moving forward, is you have that like autonomous racing league in Dubai. And they're going to have little AI controlled race cars.
Can you give me some details on that? Because I have no idea what you're talking about.
I don't know. I just seen images and I know it's coming.
So
that's all I know. But I was just like, in theory, I'm like, okay.
While.
Yeah. So essentially, Dan, like AMS2 having the AI in Sims, essentially you're just gonna be doing that in real life. Like AI is gonna be in a physical car. They're gonna have cameras. You know, you'll have all the cameras mounted and everything around the car.
I'm not gonna be anywhere near that racetrack,
so they can see. But essentially, that's what they're doing. It's like you're gonna have autonomous robotics vehicles.
Elon's not getting me, guys. He's not gonna get me.
I mean, as long as they're not using R Factor 2 AI, we'll be good. So.
But my thinking is that this could be like this just like the lasers. This could be like the first step towards someone being like, oh, we have this AI learning language specific to racing. Because like right now you have a lot of AI stuff going on. Like, you know, I live near San Francisco. AI driven cars, AI driven delivery. But if you go there, you'll also see the one where all of a sudden one of these AI cars is literally just stuck in the middle of the intersection and does not know what to do. It has lost all concept. Yeah. And then I'm seeing the same things on the delivery ones where like one gets stuck on a pebble and then 100 of them are stuck behind it. And it's because they can't think outside of whatever they're, and the limitations of their programming. So I'm just kind of hoping that someday, and that's why the racing one I bring up, I don't think any of the street driving stuff's going to help us because it's a different type of like, what are you trying to deal with? Racing, dealing with blocking, dealing with dive bombing, you know, and that's why I'm like, oh, but if it got to a point where somebody was like, hey, here's this like base code of computer awareness for racing parameters, that maybe that we'd get somewhere. And then I will point a little bit of a finger. I get a lot of companies off the hook on AI, but really when it does come down to Forza, Gran Turismo, even F1, maybe even more F1. Man, these games are very much built on AI, and I would guess it may
For
even
being
be
built on AI, they're really bad at it.
Right.
and that's the thing. And getting back to the stagnant, it's like, well, kind of on one hand, it's like, well, how dare they? I mean, is it that much better over the course of a decade when that is the backbone of these games? I just think 99% of the people who
Right.
fire up Gran Turismo for the first time, it's against the AI, not multiplayer.
Yeah.
And yes, they will get there, or we're in 2024. But so again, I think there's a little bit more of an obligation for them to do
Yeah.
better and get further than we are.
Well,
Yeah.
I think.
To your point, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say, like, I think we're getting there. Like, I've kind of noticed the trend now. Like, you guys, because you were saying like 2 to 3 years ago, like this whole, I mean, that was really the COVID era where everybody was at home, everybody was online, and that's how everybody was plugged in. But and I think for like the last year or two, like, and I'm gonna take it out of the sim racing world and now go into the first person shooter world where a lot of people were like causing backlash because there's no campaign modes anymore. And and you're also seeing people are now unplugging, just they're unplugging from social media, they're unplugging from just being online, and they want to revert back to like playing their games in their home and not being
That's a great point.
Yeah. So I think now, like and I think some of these companies are probably seeing it already and working on it. Like Iris is probably seeing it now, and with AMS2, but with the shift now with the gaming industry as a whole, I think we're going to start seeing a resurgence in more of a single player / AI development because of people now just choosing to not be online anymore.
Yeah. And it's not like AI couldn't be good. I don't know if anybody played Alien Isolation.
Yeah.
But the alien was like this really complex AI that did a lot of things that, I think like the first Fear had really good AI. There were several non-racing games that had good AI, but they're few and far between.
Right.
And I appreciate, I think it was 3 years ago, MotoGP was doing machine learning with their AI. And that did make, for them, that did make an improvement. Was it great? That's debatable. And then I think what kind of throws me for a loop is all the stuff that I've done with AI, and I am not a coder. I can only do things that the programs, the box allows me to do. Even in going to making my own corridors and AI lines and all that, I am limited by whatever the developer decides to allow me to play with. But even in that, just making it, because I have a racing background, and I'm like, okay, there's two things here. What's the actual way to get around the track, not what's the theoretical line to get around the track, right? So a lot of times what'll happen is, because we're sim racing, they will take a line that they see a driver drive in the real world, and they'll put that on the track as that's the line. And as we all know, because we're not actually sitting in that car, because physics aren't perfect, because tire models aren't perfect, and aero isn't perfect, we can't run that exact same line to actually achieve a good lap time. So then what happens is we get this really odd, weird disparity where weird braking happens.
Yep.
Let alone like the challenges that an AI has reading, cars in front of it and everything. But just in general, they'll run a weird line through a couple corners. Like, how the hell are they doing that? Because it's a theoretical line. It's not a line that somebody sat down and went like, did a bunch of laps and like, okay, this is a really good solid line to run, which would improve the racing. And then you have the corridors. Like, for the longest time, the corridors were the edges of the track, and that's the AI sees that as the entire available space. And as we all know, that's not the case. You're only getting about, unless it's like some crazy sweeper, you're only getting about 2 wide going into a corner for a passing option.
Yep.
Even if the track's four cars wide, you're really only using 2 cars-ish. Otherwise, you're going to have a big pileup going into the corner because you can't make the corner anymore. You're going to take somebody out. So just those things, right? And I think that's what iRacing is trying to continue to work on. AMS2, they are definitely working on it, because if you read their blog or their posts, that when they're working on the AI right now, that's like some of their big things is like trying to resolve how AI passes each other for a more realistic experience. And it's not easy. I'm not saying any of this is easy. I'm just saying that's where we're at right now is we're still trying to get AI to pass us as a player, to pass other AI, and to pass, not run in the back of each other and shit like that. That's where we're at with AI right now. And so nothing is good. Not nothing is good. It's good in that regard. It could be a lot better. And it's disappointing, to Sean's point, to see like these games that are on consoles that like that player base is even going to be larger for an offline experience. And like Forza's AI is just, I mean, it's an achievement right now that they don't do turn one pileups. This was their last update. Their last update was, well, now it doesn't do turn one pileups. But what was the marketing that we were sold to? That we were sold on before that point, that this was going to be revolutionary. This was going to be the best AI you've ever tried. All the machine learning, they can do fast lap times, they can do all these things. And what do we get? A worse version of Forza Motorsport 7. And you're just like,
well, I think that is across the board for that game.
But it was built from the ground up, Billy.
Yeah. So I have a question before it will slip my mind, and I don't want to forget about it, but it is dealing with AI. So I'm going to make a statement, and then I want you guys to tell me why it's wrong.
Okay.
So this is just coming from someone who primarily just does AI at a default level. I believe that any game that's come out, and this is maybe not including the latest Forza, but most games, anything that's come out in the last 2 years, maybe, even the worst AI of them all is better than the best AI that we had on any game maybe 8 years ago. Does that make sense? So while we believe that the AI is trash in many games, I still think it's a lot better than what some of the stuff that we thought was good not that long ago. So I'm just curious what you guys think. Tell me why I'm wrong.
I think there's a little truth to what you're saying outside of Forza Motorsport 7. Or 8, I'm sorry. Forza
Motorsport. We have to leave that one out. That game.
Yeah, if you took that one off the list, I'd say that for the most part, I agree with, but it's very minimal compared to the other advancements we've seen, like in graphics, physics, crash damage, and multiplayer environments, track quality. So yeah, but I would agree that and that even gets back to what Billy was saying a little bit. Some of it was really good at its time, but that's also kind of relative. It's like it could have been perfect, but I expect perfect today to be better than perfect 10 years ago.
Right.
It's the lens that what you want to look at it through. iRacing was put out over 10 years ago, right? That's correct, right?
Yeah.
R Factor 2, 2013. Assetto Corsa was 2013, and look how popular that still is because of modding. NASCAR Racing 2003 is over 20 years old, right? There's still a lot that seems to be forgotten in the pursuit of doing things that others are doing well. Does that make sense?
No.
So my point here would be iRacing's multiplayer has been the gold standard, I would say.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
It really is. Yeah.
And
no, that's 100% the case.
And there have been companies, Gran Turismo, Race Room, R Factor 2, ACC. These things have been, newer versions at least have been released. We'll see what the Le Mans Ultimate, which I'm crossing my fingers. I want Le Mans Ultimate to be good. I want that experience. I want people to have a good time with it, whichever way they choose to use that sim. I want it to be good. But nobody's been able to even equal the type of experience that you can get for, and I'm going to make a caveat here. A developer has not been able to equal the experience that iRacing gives you out of the box with their
Right.
multiplayer systems. When in turn you've had to either get a lesser of an experience because they don't have the budget or the focus or the know-how, whatever it is, or you get LFM or something like that comes in and goes, well, ACC did not do a good job here, so we're going to make this easier for you.
Right.
We're going to give you a system that now rewards you and encourages you to keep racing. For those people that like to race online, and it's migrated right to a set of Corsa and all these other systems. It's interesting that we can't rival something that was literally developed over 10 years ago.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe LMF or whatever that's called, I haven't really dabbled with it, but I've seen a lot of videos, and those are all of those things that are successful for a little while, and then people always eventually come back to iRacing. Those are basically direct copies of what iRacing is doing, correct? For the most part?
They are using a very similar system. They may have tweaks that are different. LFM seems to be the one that has, and I haven't messed with it. I'm just watching other people because the games that they're utilizing, I'm not wholeheartedly into online with those. But those sims with LFM seem to be the most robust in terms of like features and stuff like that, which is a similar thing that iRacing does. I'm just surprised that nobody's figured out a system to not only match iRacing in their multiplayer stuff, but also find ways to improve or even take a different direction that can give you maybe a different experience, but also really exciting. I would, people aren't going to like this one.
Ooh, I can't wait.
I would say Gran Turismo Sports / Gran Turismo 7 is probably one of the better, if not the best system for multiplayer racing besides iRacing's because of how they structure the things. Now, again, picking on Forza Motorsport, they're trying, and it's not bad. RF2's new system isn't bad. Race Room's system isn't bad. They just need a little bit more.
Yeah.
So we talk about, like, I think we are at a, as far as like the driving experience is concerned, I think it's better than it's probably ever been for the most part. But then when I go drive NASCAR Racing 2003 or I go drive GTR2, I have a great time driving those cars.
Yeah.
Like, it's just fun to get in and run those cars. So I'm like, well, we're more detailed. There are better things like force feedback. We use force feedback better now. We utilize all the tools there. Gives you a better, more immersive experience. But was the driving really, and is it really that much better than it used to be?
What if you just took today's graphics and put it over that Sims physics?
Isn't that the game that everybody wants? That is literally the game that everybody wants that they won't produce, right? I mean, that's great.
Yeah.
That's just my thought.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, getting to the next one, and this one, I don't want us to spend too much time on because we're already at over the hour-and-a-half mark. And it kind of goes in line with AI. What do you guys think about career mode? So we've seen in just gaming in general, career modes just going away, or like, a solo story mode or things like that. But then iRacing comes out and announced like, hey, we're working on a career mode. And this has been something, again, like a lot of people in the sim racing community have been asking for, is like, hey, we want a good career mode. Like AC tried to give you a career mode, wasn't that great. ACC tried also. But now, what are your guys' stance on having a career mode in sim racing?
Who you want to go first?
I'm gonna go Sean.
There you go.
Go Sean.
Okay. This is something that I secretly really, really wish for. Like, look at like Codemasters. Like, how many years of their like, be the driver, be the game, whatever their motto has been, right? And now I was like playing the most recent version, and it's like it's still all in there, but it's like they just didn't do anything with it.
No.
And I don't even know how much time it would even really take, because it's like the assets are so much easier than trying to come up with tire modeling physics. You know, it's like it's all just imagery, storyline, you know, scripting. And it's like it really wouldn't take that many people to create a pretty extensive, detailed career mode to go with a racing title. Now, and I was thinking about this before the show, and it was really hard to not touch upon this with AI.
Yeah.
Because it is really important to have
Right.
good AI if we're going to talk about career mode.
Yes.
Now, for me, being the diehard multiplayer racer that I am today, what I really wish for is like more like getting back to wheelman, stunt driver. I was even thinking about it. I was like, if somebody wanted to give me a bunch of money to build a game, I would build you a game that was basically Baby Driver, you
Mhm.
know, and it's like you're going to be a for hire wheelman, evading cops and hopefully not killing innocent pedestrians, right? And doing city driving, escaping, and moving up your ladder, like Grand Theft Auto meets, you know, the Crew or whatever they're going to call that. And to me, that could be such an epically fun game. And you know, it would actually be probably back to like more city driving AI than racing AI, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that a career mode would be really cool, but racing career mode is going to be a little dry, like playing. I watch my brother play a lot of the baseball
Right.
game, and it's like, okay, so you're in minor league, and then you're in major league, and then it's just how many seasons you're going to play, really, you know. And yeah, your attributes go up a little bit, you know, but it's not even like they go up like the Royd era of baseball, you know, where all of a sudden Barry Bonds is like twice as big as he used to be. But yeah, I think that it is important because, again, I am the ambassador of sim racing. What do I want? I want this sport hobby to keep growing and growing and growing. And I think that career mode failures is as much a detractor as the game's ability were to sell the title in the first place. So if they get in and, you know, somebody just like, oh, I'm a gamer, but I don't know if I like racing genre, I'm going to try out Codemasters, and it's a poor career mode, poor AI driving experience, it might be the last time they dabble in our niche. And so, yeah, I think it is important on that hand. And then final thing, and I will shut up, is that I think for people who are super duper diehard online racers, even
Mm-hmm.
at some point we all get fatigued if you're going to do this. I mean, I played
Yeah.
golf
Yeah.
for a decade, right? And
Yep.
then at some point I was like, you know what? I'm not wasting this weekend golfing. You know, I've done it 52 weeks in a row. I am not golfing this weekend. And I'm not saying I had to give up golf, but I had to just not do it that weekend. And I think that a career mode / AI offers that opportunity for when someone's just like, man, I just don't want to go get yelled at for taking someone out, or I don't want to lose my I rating. I just want to go do this for some fun. And so, yeah, I think it's essentially important.
Yeah. Billy, you want to take the next round?
All right. I'll try to be better about making this shorter. And we've talked about this on my streams again ad nauseum, and I know Dan and
Yeah.
Amir have been in there when I've mentioned this. So career modes, I think, I used to be really like, why don't modern games have a career mode? I just want it to be like blank,
Right.
right? Pick your favorite thing from back in the day that you played that got you hooked, and you go, that's the thing that I want. I want that. Give me.
Yeah.
And everybody says it. Everybody sits here and says, Forza Motorsport 4 had the best. Forza Motorsport 3, Gran Turismo 4, Gran Turismo 3, whatever it is, right? Whatever they grew up playing.
Mm-hmm.
I want that thing.
Right.
The hard part about this is you have two groups of people. You have people that grew up when career modes weren't really any good, in my
Mhm.
opinion. So, you know, anything in the last 10, probably even closer to 15 years
Right.
in a racing game, career modes are just a repetition of races.
Mhm.
There's no real unlocks because everything is now you pay for those unlocks with DLC or whatever, right? It's a way to make money
Yeah.
where before it was
Microtransactions.
it was a way to encourage you to continue to play the game, but not because they were worried about playtime metrics. They were just trying to give you an added value to keep you hooked and enjoy the game. Because why? They wanted you as a repeat customer, so you came back and bought their next one.
Yeah.
That's what they're trying to do.
Mhm.
We don't have those systems available anymore, and especially with the rise of being able to race with each other online. The idea of locking things away anymore, I can't tell you how many times I've heard while I've been doing the sim racing stuff, and it always sounds weird to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have to unlock anything.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
God
To me,
forbid you have to
that's-
work for something, huh?
Yeah.
yeah, and that's kind of
Oh.
what they're looking for. They don't care about that part, but then people will decry about not having a career mode. And that's where the things
Yeah.
kind of you either grew up either not caring about a career mode, or you grew up in an era where career mode was garbage. So that's your basis of reference. So you expect things to be given to you.
Yep.
You know, we
I
talk
want
about
it now.
modern-
Well, is it okay if we charge you for it?
yeah, or like modern Forza where it just barfs everything on
Right.
you, right? It
Yeah.
says, "Here, have everything." I mean, how much praise did Forza Horizon 5 get
Oh,
for
yeah.
just, and it just gave you everything.
Yep.
And everybody's like, all the racing people, all the driving people are like, I don't like that. I don't want that.
It shifted
And they've
to
been saying it for years.
collection. Yeah, it shifted to car collection rather than actually racing,
Right.
in my opinion, especially the Horizon series.
So then you have those of us that recall back in the day the attachment we got. And this is going to sound like a foreign concept to people that either, again, don't care about a career mode, or that didn't grow up with any good career modes. This is a time and a place thing. And you have a lot of those people getting older now, and even the people that were very young that played Forza Motorsport 4 and 3 and maybe Gran Turismo 4, like, we still have nostalgia for those career modes. We have an idea that I need to progress, I need to kind of struggle, and the grind is not okay. Or we don't see that as grinding. We see that as a chance to feel the progression of the car
Yeah.
and feel like a sense. This is the terrible thing that EA said with what was a Battlefield, a sense of achievement and accomplishment, or whatever crap it was. But back then, that's what you did, and it's because come to the realization that because we didn't have access to those cars back then. To Amir's point,
Yeah.
Skyline. I had no idea what a Skyline is. The R33 is my unicorn. I like getting that car in my possession. You know what I'm saying? And it was a chance for us, whether it was like Gran Turismo, Grand Prix Legends, or something like that. It was a chance to immerse ourselves in situations that would never be.
Yeah.
We didn't, and to Gran Turismo and Forza's point, more towards Gran Turismo, these were things that we didn't know about or we never thought we would ever see in a game.
Mhm.
And so the idea of those things being there and the progression system that was associated with those things, we put one in the same. We
Yeah.
sit here and we go, that's the thing that I want. The problem is, people don't like it. The new Forza actually gave you a version of that, and people hate it.
Yeah.
People hate it. Why? Because these cars aren't novelties, or they're not unicorns anymore. Every game on the planet now, since Gran Turismo, has had a Skyline, has had those unobtainable cars. They're not a thing anymore. So the struggle to get those cars is not appealing.
Yeah.
Well, I can just go back to my old,
Yeah. I already
prior
had it.
game, and yeah, I already had those things. So where I used to decry and be like, I don't understand what you guys don't understand, developers, about doing this career mode, now has become where I'm like, I don't know how you do a career mode anymore.
Yeah.
How
I don't think you
make
can do it the
something-
way we remember. I just
Yeah.
don't think that is going to work with the current
And so then I sit
generation.
here and I go like, well, what kind of career mode could you do? Like, yeah, we could have consequences. We could have these things. But is it still going to feel like just a collection of races just to progress to the next thing? And why is there a progression if I've already done the thing. So it's a real, I don't know that there's a good answer where I used to be really like, I'll admit it. I used to, up until probably 6 months ago, I was like, every game should have a career mode.
Mhm.
And then as like kind of through Forza, I realized that people were saying what they wanted, and I know that that's not the same system. Like I'm not saying that the Forza thing that they put out is perfect or even good. There's problems with that system. But it got me thinking about how we view career modes. And
Right.
like one of the things that always kept me racing in Gran Turismo was the different skins.
Yeah.
You couldn't paint skins in Gran Turismo, so getting a random choice of which car you got in your garage and jumping in there to see, oh man, I got the green one again. I want the red one.
Yeah.
Like those kind of things kept you playing.
Yep.
And then you got to experience and buy other cars in the game that you never got to play before. That's what kept you going. I don't know how you do that now. It's a really, and I was like adamant about this when Gran Turismo 7 comes out, and I still maintain that menu system is garbage. Those
Yeah.
cafe menu things. It's a terrible way to try to get people into other game or other cars. How do you fix that?
Yeah.
I don't have a good answer anymore.
Well, I think
I don't
that's why
either.
I made I think that's why I made the parallel comment about baseball, like, because it's like all you do is just it's so repetitive. It's the exact same thing. So what is the draw? What is the pull? What's the engagement? And that's why for me, like, as much as I love the concept in my mind of, oh, you start off in Formula V and then you advance to Formula 4 and, progression. I'm like, but do I really want to play that?
Yeah.
And it's like, because like you said, I can just go jump in a Formula 1 race against, the best sim racers in the world. So I don't really need that. And that's where I get to in the world of motorsports. I feel like it almost needs to be like if the game could do you guys remember Sports Car GT 1999?
I had the
Barely.
PlayStation version. I didn't
Yeah.
have the good
All right.
version that was on PC.
They put you in the crap car at the beginning, so it wasn't a progression of trying to get to the bigger leagues. It was to run with a faster car. And so it was almost like getting back to like where Formula 1 was 10 years ago. Like you needed to outperform the car. And then if you outperformed the car, because they don't expect the car to do better than 12th. So if you can put it in the 9th place, you've done great. And so then you got moved up to Porsche or whatever. And so I feel like there might be room if someone was really clever to be able to capture that reality of racing, of being on a private team or a shitty team and then getting on a better team and being not only a better driver, but having better equipment. But then you just win all the time because that's the way racing is. And then the other one would be getting back to what I was saying. It has nothing to do with racing. Motorsports career mode might be best served. One of my all-time favorite career modes, if you called me out, is Need for Speed Porsche Unleashed.
Mhm.
And it had nothing to do with
That
racing.
one's very
Right.
Yep, was very unique. Right.
Yeah. And it drew me in. It was like, oh, now deliver this car, and and it wasn't even linear. Like it didn't just like one of the cooler cars was the 914.
Right.
So it wasn't a
Mhm.
matter of like where you were in the career mode. So it was like you were constantly engaged, and it had nothing to do with racing. Even the AI, it's like I think that I'm really testing my. I think there was like AI civilian traffic because you couldn't get a scratch on the car. It was kind of the key of the game.
Yeah, I think it
I
was
don't
something
think-
like that.
Yeah, but it wasn't critical to the enjoyment of the game. And actually, all the Need for Speed early ones, where it wasn't even about. Well, it was a little bit of a race because it was like you against the other Need for Speeders and avoiding the cops.
Yeah.
But the career modes again had nothing to do with actual quote unquote racing for points and being in a series. So
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I think that people need there to be career modes. Like they're just gamers who don't want to play with others.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you're looking at them. It's just when you can go online and race the car that you have to struggle with through a career mode, what is the incentive anymore? Even if it's a career mode that is devoid of the actual racing part of it. Like the thing I always envisioned was a career mode where you had to unlock the car. The problem is when I thought of this, there weren't as many sims and there weren't as many of,
No.
these things,
We
right?
remember that being a lot more available than what I think it actually was.
Yeah.
Like I don't think as many games had that as what I want to believe that was the case when I was young.
I don't disagree. And so what I thought of was mixing American Truck Sim and these things, and you could either hire somebody to drive your rig like a real person. You could hire somebody to drive your rig to the track, right?
Yeah.
And then, or you could just pay money, or you could drive it yourself. You get to the track, and then I envisioned. Remember how Project Cars, I think it was 2, had where you could kind of like tell the crew chief what
I believe it was 2.
what you needed. Okay, a more in-depth version of that. Make it like a mini game.
Mhm.
This would, in a sense, kind of give you the idea of how to talk to someone, right? Anybody that I know, Sean knows this. The ability to communicate with your crew chief or your engineer and tell them what you need is a really key component
Yeah.
into your performance as a driver. Me being able to communicate with my crew chiefs when I raced was huge.
Yeah.
I have to sit there, and every different crew chief I had to learn a little bit different way of communicating the thing that I needed or what I thought I needed from them, and then they would come back to me and I hear what you're saying. Let me do this because I think actually what you mean or what you need is this thing. That's a big thing. Turn that into a mini game. Turn that into something where you don't get to set up the car.
Yeah.
But you tell most people that, and they would freak out.
Yeah.
Those people that like to set up a car. But this would be part of the game. Like, you need to understand what the game needs from you to tell it. Am I understeer on entry? Am I understeering in the center of the corner? Is it on exit? Is that because I'm overdriving, which can cause an understeer?
Right.
The car actually has an oversteer condition, but because the car oversteers, I overdrive going into the corner, which actually causes an understeer. There's all these, you need to diagnose and learn these things to how to communicate. And I always thought that, this is not a new concept. I just would like to see it in sim racing, where when you show up to a race in a career mode, it's anybody at that time and place. If you're online and you accept this invitation that says you're telling everybody else you're online, you get to that race and it pings.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, there's a race happening in 5 minutes here. Do you want to jump into this? And you get to race against a mix of AI and a mix of humans. You get to set the level that you want to compete at, or it has a ranking system. And then from that, you earn your credits in order to either get with a new team, better car, better part, something. So I've always thought of these things. I just don't know, again, kind of reevaluating my idea of what a career mode is. I don't even know if that would be appealing to most people, because you just can't just hop in and run whatever you want.
Yeah.
I think that would be incredibly difficult to implement, and you could do it, but I don't know if the audience would be large enough. I would love it personally, but I don't know if the actual audience would be large enough for the developers to have that time invested in something like that. But I dream right there with you when it comes to that. I would love to have something like that for sure.
Well, when I always talk about my Ready Player One vision for gaming, right? Like, I look at when I watch that movie, and it shouldn't have opened my mind that much. It wasn't that big a deal.
You talk about that.
I know, right?
There's an internet.
No. It just, for some reason, that movie uncorked my brain on a bunch of things. But I'm just like what you're saying, Billy. It's like, a real racing career would be a lot less fun than people think.
Yeah.
Because the amount of time, until you are Max Verstappen, you spend very little time in the car compared to the amount of effort going into, it's like, where's the Monday through Friday letter writing and phone calls just trying to get a sponsor? Where's the frustration of showing up Friday night and realizing Saturday that you have the wrong setup and you're dog shit for the whole weekend, or just way off because everyone else
literally
got
throwing the
some,
kitchen sink at it, trying to fix the car.
Doesn't
'cause it
Formula
won't-
Yeah.
One kind of do that in a way?
So yeah,
The
Formula
Formula One
One
games?
Yeah, so you start off like in GP2, like their F2 series, and you've got to do like it's results kind of based game. So if you finish like top 5 or whatever, you kind of go up the ladder. But like, and then you
but you
finally
don't
make
get
it in
declined
Formula
by sponsors.
No. But then so if like say in GP2, you finish GP2 and you did really good, then you get contract offers from like Haas, Williams, and you've got to meet their goals. If you don't meet your goals, they sack you. And each team has different goals. Like, so, if you drive for Williams, like, bro, just keep the car clean, don't crash it. We just want you to finish.
Yeah.
Versus like Ferrari, like, no, Ferrari, you've got to win every single race or you're done and out of here. So yeah, kind of that they do. Anyways, going on. So our final topic, and I'll give you guys a little bit for our viewers that are watching, and for you guys, I don't know how long you guys have been following along. The Fanatec or Fanatec situation. It's been going on for quite a while. It's been a hot topic. Sean and I, we've kind of stayed quiet on it because we didn't really go out and say a bunch of things and not know the whole situation about what was going on and just assume these are the things that are going on. But give you guys a backstory. So starting with Black Friday, they had a lot of issues where people pre-ordered a lot of equipment Black Friday because they were selling stuff for like heavily discounted.
I bought pedals.
Yeah, and nobody was getting anything. Nobody was hearing anything. People were submitting
mine.
tickets. No answer back. And then also with the new DD, GT Plus, that was promised to be released, and then a lot of things were happening where it never got released. So people were not getting orders. People were not hearing back from customer service, and people were, rightfully so angry. And then Thomas had, an interview with Karith, I think his name. I can't remember say his name correctly.
His name
Yeah,
is
I know what you're
Clickbait.
talking about.
Yeah, so Thomas did an interview where he explained, hey, our systems weren't syncing, and the demand was just too high for us to handle because we were switching from shipping or warehouse providers and things like that, and our customer service wasn't up to par. So essentially, it was a lot of it. For me personally, it was like just a lot of question dodging. It's everybody else's problem except for me, even though I'm the CEO of this company. But shortly after that interview, things have been kind of resolving themselves. And to give him credit, Sony did promise him, hey, we'll give you the license for the DD Plus, but they took forever. They took a long time to actually go through the testing and get it approved. And I think it was last week or the week before they got the approval, and immediately they started shipping out people's orders of that. So, for me, I guess like questioning, like, as a company that's been around for a very, very long time, they've been in the sim industry for about 27 plus years, right? Do you think like, what is your take on it? And like, do you think like this is an acceptable standard to where, of how to treat your customers?
Can I go first on this one?
I was
Sure.
going to say, when does your
Or
Dan
you
go?
give us your take. Go ahead, Dan.
All right. So let me give you a little backstory of why I've been so involved in this, because I actually have. So over my shoulder here is a CSL DD, which I bought. When I got back into sim racing this time, I went all in and I got CSL DD, 8 Newton meter, the whole shebang, right? I bought it. It wasn't sent to me. And I instantly loved it. So my opinion is they are shooting themselves in the foot here, because I've used a lot of Fanatec equipment in the past, and the equipment itself has always been fantastic. That is still one of the best wheelbases I've ever used. Okay. I made a review video just for shits and giggles of that, and it ended up going quote unquote viral, whatever you want to say. It got a ton of views and it sent them a lot of people. I made no money off of this. But what did happen is I immediately started getting comments and emails and all kind of stuff about people that I sent to them to buy a piece of hardware, and they never got it, never heard. So I had to dive in and figure out what was going on. So I wish that, again, I'm going to make it short and simple. Their hardware, their equipment is great, but their customer service and their support is terrible. And the biggest issue that I have with the whole damn thing is that Thomas specifically, because it trickles down from the top, this is the way a business works.
Right.
He refuses to take responsibility for anything. And that is not the way. That was perfectly clear in the interview that you referenced, Amir. When I listened to it, and I listened to it really close, and at first I was like, oh, it sounds like this is going to be good. He's kind of taken, but at the end, he always, every topic, he would end it with some kind of jab like, oh, well, that wasn't our fault, or that was this guy's fault, or we don't have enough employees in this specific department. But they've been around for a long time. That is absolutely not the way you can run a business in that scenario. And they need to grow. Because they are growing for consumers, they are trying to send out a ton of really good stuff, but they're not large enough. They don't have the network to do that. And it seems like to me, Thomas just refuses to jump on that train, and that's what they have to do. And last thing I'll say is it really sucks because I genuinely love their products, and there are still, right now, I'm still getting emails daily about people that I sent to them because of my review that have not heard a peep from them. So I keep hearing people say that it's getting better, but that has not been what I have been hearing from people directly. So yeah, it's really a shame. It's a terrible thing going on for sure.
Okay. Who wants to go next? Or
I'll go.
Go ahead, Sean.
Rigby. No, was that the word from Silicon Valley when they wanted to trash talk Richard? Rigby. Fanatec makes great gear. No,
say your safe word right now. Safe word.
You're the best. Send me stuff.
No, I
Pineapple juice.
Everything has to be a balance, and let this be a little life lesson to everybody out there. Like you can't just put a supercharger on it without putting better exhaust, right? If you want it in, it's got to go out. Like things are about balance. So when I see that Fanatec went out of their way to buy a racing series to promote their name, long pain, when I see that they paid money to be in virtually every modern sim, billboard advertising on tracks that wouldn't have their name on them, they went out of their way to create this marketing behemoth, i.e. a supercharger. But they didn't do anything on the exhaust end. They didn't have balance. And this is, and lucky for us sim racers, it happened at a great time for the market because this is when Moza and Sim Magic came onto the scene. So, like, the timing for Fanatec couldn't have been worse.
Right.
The timing for Moza and Sim Magic couldn't have been better. And now I believe that Fanatec, because they make great gear, I've never had anything in my Fanatec lineup of equipment really have a problem. I mean, isolated small things, but it's been very solid gear. I think they'll be fine and they'll recover, but they have taken a huge hit.
Yeah.
But that we will now be blessed with, 3 primary companies where Fanatec, Thrustmaster had stayed out of the game and kind of just like took their market share and let it fall away. And Fanatec was left, and Logitech kind of did the same thing. And then Fanatec was just sort of like the default, this is the gear company outside like super high end. And so, yeah, I think in the end, it works out great for sim racers because full circle, they'll be back. Everybody will have the freedom of choice. It'll keep the prices, again, look, everyone's talked inflation. I'm not arguing it, but not in sim racing.
No, it's down.
Yeah. So
it's gotten better, and the price has come down.
Yeah. I look at that new GT Neo wheel, $290. That would have been
that's great.
$450 wheel a few years ago. So it's kind of cool. I feel a little bad for Fanatec because I think that they've fallen from grace.
No.
But, and then the other part of the balance is, okay, cool. So you got your supercharger. You didn't get the exhaust. It's on the way. You better get that customer service department firing on all cylinders to make right somehow, some way. And I don't know if it's coupons. I don't know if it's falling on the sword, but you're not the first person who's called them out on customer service.
I mean, just being honest about it would be a huge leap in the right direction. Just admit fault. Is one
Yep.
of the first things you can do.
I think that was
And realistic about timeline.
and I think that was the biggest problem. Like if they were just communicating, like none of this backlash would have happened. Just
That's the biggest thing I
communicate.
received emails about was
Right.
communication.
I mean, things happen. I mean, every company is going to have some issues. You know, if you're transitioning or changing how you do things, like there are going to be stumbling blocks. But if you've spent, like Sean said, you've spent all this money to market to make this company the behemoth that it is, and when things go wrong and then people aren't receiving the orders or they're having issues, like, and you're just staying quiet, like, you're gonna expect a huge backlash because now you're a big behemoth company. And then it's just, again, they just stayed quiet and not saying anything, and people were not getting, you know, and their customer service was a hit or miss. Like, I can't say it was completely bad. It was a hit or miss depending on where you were from. I think it was pretty much like region based
Yes,
on what was going on.
that's correct. Yeah,
Uh,
some people have gotten their stuff, like Billy said, with no issues. That
Yeah.
for sure has happened as well.
I think that was the biggest problem. Is if he just communicated, like, "Hey, here's what is going on," you wouldn't have this issue. Yeah. And because to me, like, I think the guy that did their interview, Kirith, he did a great job interviewing him. Like, he wasn't softballing or anything like that. He was asking, like, "Hey, here are legit things going on." I was unhappy with how Thomas was responding to these questions. Like,
Exactly.
me, like, I'm project manager. Like, I'm the top guy. Like, if a project fails, it's not on the guys that are working for me or doing this stuff for me. It fails because of me. And so for him to sit there and lay the blame on all these other things, like, I get it. Like, bro, things happen, mistakes happen, but you also have to take responsibility because you are the boss. And what are you doing to remedy those issues that happen? And he kind of was just like skirting around it and like, oh, I'm just, it's not my problem. It was things that happened. And so to me, that shows me you're more of a reactive leader versus a proactive.
Yeah.
So, and to me, like, with how the sim racing market is nowadays, I mean, you have SimiCube, SimMagic, Moza. I mean, and if they're all pretty much essentially on par with their equipment for the most part.
The Moza R9 is
right?
almost identical to the 8 Newton meter CSL DD. Someone that's not that seasoned, I cannot tell the difference. They are almost identical.
Yeah. So for
Visually
me,
too.
Yeah. For me, like,
Mm-hmm.
you've really got to be on your game, and you can't skip a beat. And if you do skip a beat, like, you've got to come out and say, "Hey, here's what happened. I'm taking blame, and we're gonna get it fixed for you." And all that just never happened.
But Amir, did you get the opinion? Because I watched that review a couple times. Did you get the opinion that Thomas still believes that they are the only game in town? That is the opinion that I still got from him, even though that is no longer the case.
So, I mean, I'm not gonna say
Thomas
like
has had a history of like
Yeah.
contacting
Yeah, I mean-
people in reviews and saying
Yeah.
like, I can't believe you think that our product is
So,
is not better than theirs.
So funny thing, and I'll tell a story. So before I started doing videos for the Simpit, I had my own little channel, and Sean kind of referenced it. I went to my very first Sim Expo, and if you guys remember it, they Fanatec built the Franken station where they had all their previous wheelbases, and then they had the SimiCube motors,
I do remember that.
and then they had their DD1 and their DD2. And I tried them, so I went through the line and tried them, and I did their station last because I wanted to go try everybody else's stuff first. And I can tell you, like, I was surprised. In the video I mentioned it and doing, like, to me, their CSW on that Franken rig felt the best. Their CSW 2.5 was freaking amazing.
I've heard a lot of people still say that.
And
To
to
this
see
day.
like the SimiCube's motors were not configured to be good, and because at the time their DD1 and DD2 were not that good.
Yeah, they were very rough.
And he like actually went on my channel at the time and like laid out like a massive response about like, well, you should have done this.
Yep.
You should have did this. You should have done that. I'm like, I'm at an expo. Like, my thought process as at an expo is your equipment should be top tier to make it stand out in front of everybody else. It's not my job when I only get like 10, 15 minutes to try your product to go through and configure and make sure everything works great. That is your job, not mine. And I was like, I wasn't even surprised because like I think I only had like 100 people on my channel like subscribe to me, and then for him to leave that comment was like, bro, like chill, lay down. So that kind of showed me.
Have a nap.
Yeah.
Well, that's his radar. That's always been Thomas's radar. It doesn't really matter what size you are, it doesn't matter. He always goes to find the negatives that people talk about, and those are the people that he will, I hate to say it, but go after or whatever. I have heard that story from a lot of people. You can put the best video out explaining that their CSLDD is like the greatest thing since sliced bread, and you'll never hear a peep from them. But if you make one complaint, they're going to find you whether you have 2 subscribers or 20,000. Doesn't matter. That's the problem with Thomas, and he runs his business. Look, I don't know them, but from the best I can tell, and what I have experienced directly and seen other people say, is that is the way he runs his business from the top down. I work for a very small company where there's only like one person above me, and we all we have to understand that the way the person above me is going to affect me, then I affect the people below me. And when you have that mentality, it's not a good way to run a business. No. It's just not.
Agreed.
Yeah. I hope they get it worked out though. And I think they will. You know, I think that Thomas has always been really good at talking enough about something, but not too much that it eventually just kind of disappears. I mean, you know what I mean?
Eventually they fixed all their issues. Like all the previous issues, they've eventually fixed them. But I think now, at that time, they had no real other challenger in the market.
Yeah. Where were you going to go?
Right? I mean, you had SimiCube, but SimiCube was like the mythical creature that nobody really could get. But now DDs are everywhere. Like, you know, so now he's got all these up and coming companies, SimMagic, Moza, and all them that really rival, and sometimes some of their equipment, equipment they have are better than Fanatec. They've got to be on their game now. They can't afford to make these large missteps, because it's going to hurt their business really, really big compared to like what it would have done maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah. Are you guys on the
talking? Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead. Go ahead. You're good, Bill.
Oh, I was just gonna say. So I'm not following any of this stuff. I've seen like the thumbnails. I did watch Dan's video, and that was about it.
Yeah.
So I don't really know, because I ordered my. You're welcome. I ordered my my pedals to replace my V3Is because I wanted to try something different, and people were talking about, you know, they really like the CSLs, or I think these are CSLs.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, you know, I'm putting a new rig together. Let me try these, because they were a good price, and I got them. Like, I got them quick on Black Friday, so I don't have that experience. And I also will say that the Fanatec products that I've gotten in the past, clear back to Forza Motorsport 4, have always worked well. Never had an issue with them. I had one customer support thing one time. They got back to me, you know, within like 24 hours and helped me, you know, resolve the issue that I had. So I've never really had this kind of experience. And I'm also a person that, you know, I'm still using a Thrustmaster TGT here that, you know.
Which is still one of the best wheels.
Hell yeah.
The TSPC, they're still one of the best wheels available.
And the only reason I swapped to the TGT is so I could play Gran Turismo. So he may be coming from this, from an angle of the console side.
Right.
Where, you know, again, I didn't watch that interview because this is not really my stay in your lane, Billy. So I didn't watch any of that stuff, and he may be looking at it from that perspective where, yeah, well, what other company right now is going to do what we do in the console space?
Right.
And maybe that's where they're starting to get a lot of traction. Maybe I have no idea, but maybe that's where he's coming from, and maybe in some respect he's right in that thought process. I think if you look at it from an overall perspective, I don't that doesn't seem right. And I'm just going to say, from my experience as somebody who's run multi-million-dollar projects and worked for a large corporation, they've gotten to a point where, like, I worked for an electrical parts distributor. So you had the electricians that we sold to, and we bought from the manufacturers. We're the middleman. There's 10 companies that do the same thing we do.
Yeah.
So what is our value now? Our value is the services that we provide, the customer support, those things. And that was drilled into us from day one. So it kind of feels like, from what I'm gathering, it sounds like, you know, they kind of got used to doing things a certain way. And maybe that way they didn't scale up properly, to Sean's point. Sounds like they didn't scale up. And, you know, like I think Tom or Joa said it in chat. If you own the website and the website has a problem, well, whose fault is that? Well, that's your fault. You made that decision for the website. Whose fault is it when a manufacturer has an issue? Well, that's your fault. You chose the manufacturer. You can sit there and say, well, I didn't anticipate a manufacturer having a problem, but ultimately, that's my decision for choosing that manufacturer, and here's what we're going to do to remedy that issue. And, you know, again, being a middleman, we worked with manufacturers that there were production problems, and a customer, the electrician, is sitting there going, where's my stuff? And I have to be like, hold on. I had to be preemptive. I could not let him get to that point, because by the time he gets to that point, he's going to be irate with me. So my job was to cut it off at the pass and be checking manufacturing, setting realistic dates. And if there's a problem, I had to sit there and be proactive. To Amir's point, I had to be proactive and say, call the customer and say, hey, look, there is a problem and it's going to delay everything by a week. We're working on getting you a solution, but unfortunately, here's where we are, and there's not anything I can do about it. Like we have no recourse. You know, the production plant and the manufacturer are working to try to get these parts. They know how important it is. You're either gonna have to wait, or their other decision was to source it somewhere else, right? And that's the thing. I don't think that the sourcing from other sim racing hardware manufacturers is really kind of hitting him, it sounds like, when that's a viable option now, more so than it's ever been. So I have no real, you know, I don't know about this particular situation. All it is what I'm gathering is that, you know, if there are production problems, if there are customer service problems, my experience, it tells me that's not the way you handle this kind of thing.
And it's very important to hear from someone in your scenario, because you absolutely have nothing to do with it. You don't know anything about the situation. And sometimes it takes someone outside of the scenario looking in to give the best input on what's going on, because you're not going to have any biases or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I mean, I got my pedals. They're great.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So. Sorry, I had to get up, guys. My coffee was running through me like crazy.
No, you're good, man. I mean, for me, I think like does anybody else really have anything to add to it? All right, so
I think we've badmouthed them enough for one day, right?
I don't think it's bad-mouthing, though.
Did I mention Fanatec makes great gear?
Sean, you can't suck
and
up
Fanatec,
now.
if you watch this video, you need to send Sean stuff to review, please. Thank you.
I don't think
and Amir.
I don't think it's bad-mouthing. I think that this is a scenario that they cannot be oblivious to. They had the interview. Thomas had the interview. And I think that, to Amir's point about going through the different wheelbases at that expo, like, I feel like sometimes that's kind of the sentiment that gets put to, I will say AMS2 had a similar problem. We didn't know what we were talking about. The reason, Dan, and Dan knows this, that I didn't play AMS2 for a really long time is I didn't like the way it drove. There were fundamental problems I had with the AI and how the cars drove. And yet the constant pushback was, you YouTubers don't know what you're talking about. Now, there are instances where that can be applied. I'm not saying everybody knows everything. And I have been proven to be wrong. I've talked about this on my streams, where I've learned over time that my diagnosis of the issue may be correct, but the thing that I was saying that caused the problem is not. And then I get a developer say, hey, Billy. But I appreciate that. I appreciate when a developer comes to me, because then I can relay that back in a way to my audience that says, this is the actual problem. This is what I was informed about, right? I appreciate being educated. What doesn't go down well is being told, whether it's Fanatec, AMS2, any company, is that you all don't know what you're talking about, coming from the person that made the thing.
Right.
Instead of being like, I hear what you're saying. I understand. Have you by chance tried doing this? This might give you a better result. Amir, I totally understand where you're coming from. Here's the technical reasons why that these wheels are different from each other, and this is why they could provide you a more superior experience
Right.
depending on the wheel, the base that you're using, and that's our fault for not getting those things in line for you to experience what Fanatec has to offer. So hopefully you'll give us another chance, and here's why.
Right.
I mean, that's what I worked in sales at that electrical distributor. That's sales 101.
Yep.
That's
Right.
what
Yep.
you do.
Yep.
And so, like, I feel like this is, not necessarily a Fanatec problem in the sense that I feel like there are several companies that kind of have an antagonistic mindset towards these type of things because they take it personally. This isn't personal. I don't know you as a
Can't take it
person.
personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know you as a person. And if I did, that might make me suspect
Yeah.
to the things that I'm trying to convey to the people, about the product that I'm either reviewing or talking about, right? So it's not personal. And if to Dan's point earlier, if I'm thinking these things about your product, whether it's hardware, software, it doesn't matter. Then there's other people that think the same way. So this is not just one person on their own boat sailing, in the middle of the ocean. There's more people that think exactly right. Now, whether that is technically correct or not, that is an entirely different thing. And I will be the first to admit when I've done, said something wrong or whatever, and make a correction because it's happened before, And I think that may be missing because people take things personally that aren't meant to be delivered personally.
No, I agree. I mean,
Well-
100% agreement. Yeah.
The last thing I'll say about this, and then the reason why, and I think a lot of people were very misinformed on why I made my video. I didn't know it was going to make 10 views, and it got crazy. It went up. But anyways, the reason why I made the video was because there were a lot of much bigger creators that have affiliate links and make money from Fanatec that were keeping their damn mouth shut. Now, I'm not going to say any names, but any somewhat knowledgeable person will know several that I'm talking about. And when you are in bed with the company and you do not make correct statements of what was going on, or at least let people know, but you're still continually releasing video after video talking about the next product that they have, and it's the best thing since sliced bread, that's a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
And I just got tired of seeing that so much. So I'm an asshole through and through. I always will be, always have been, I am. So when I see something like that, I made a video, and it did what it did. But I felt like it needed to be said by someone, because most people were just keeping their mouth shut, especially, I'm sure y'all know who I'm talking about. But anyways, that's why I made that video. But then I got a lot of heat about it, and they were like, well, you made that video because, the title was catchy, blah, 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 blah. I said, well, if it helped one person
to watch it though,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it just, I don't know, man. Because I don't do this for a living, I am unfiltered.
Yeah.
And I would just say whatever. I'm very unfiltered. And I know that there are a lot of people that do it for a living that are also very unfiltered also. But, some people are not. And I just thought it was worth saying. So I put it out there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, guys. I mean, that was a good way. I'm sorry. We could keep on going talking about this stuff for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah, I could talk to you guys for like 2 days straight, probably.
But unfortunately, we got into it, like we've been at this like almost 2.5 hours, and I mean we could probably go for another 2.5 more. I know some of you guys got other things to do on this great weekend. So, any final closing comments? Dan, you want to go first?
I just want to say thank you very much for letting me hang out with you guys. This was I had a lot of fun, and anytime you would like me to come back, I would be more than happy and chat with you guys. And thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Billy?
Ditto. This is the kind of stuff that I enjoy, and it's not something that maybe always gets the most views or something like that. But This is this kind of stuff that I like, and hopefully everybody, and thanks for hanging out and chat, and thanks for inviting me on. More than willing to do it at any point because I just like this kind of thing. And I just kind of been doing my own thing, just streaming whenever I feel like it on YouTube and Twitch. And if you guys want to hang out, more than welcome. And again, good time, appreciate it.
Yeah. Sean?
Dan, Billy, both you guys, thank you so much for coming and hanging out. Like Billy said, being able to talk about stuff, and I don't care about the views because it's really just about having fun. Like, I love sim racing. I love this hobby. It isn't perfect. There are things that can be better, and there are things to talk about in it. And I do our pit stop show on Fridays. Same sort of thing. I just want to cover what's going on in sim racing, and I figured that a lot of people would have that same interest. For me, whatever hobby we'd be talking about, it doesn't matter. This format of chilling out with friends and talking about, like we do hobbies because we're so into them. That's why they get classified at that level of not just some pastime, but a hobby. And it's just cool having people who have differing views and like minds at the same time and being able to talk about it. So I really appreciate it. I love your guys' outlook and value and your opinions on all this stuff. So thank you. And yeah, I'd love to do this again many times because it's cool. And there's always things in sim racing that need to be discussed. I mean, I know there's a topic that we didn't get to today that I'm very intrigued with.
We can save it for next time.
Yeah, and I think that it's stuff that needs to be kind of addressed. And I like to think at some point that a developer might be listening.
Yeah.
And because maybe we actually do represent the communities. We're all really, really involved in our communities, not just content creators. And it's like, we have our opinions, but we're also kind of bringing the pulse and thinking of our groups and whether it's iRacing or Automobilista, it's like, hey, there's things that you guys can do with your existing sim that really might get more bang for the buck than you think. Same thing with the hardware. Fanatec, learn from your mistake. And if you didn't learn from our show, but maybe all it took was 10 or 15 more emails and you'd be fine. And there wouldn't be anything going on, with a negative black cloud, that I'm sure will go away and clear up. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, great format. Both you guys, thank you. Amir, thank you for rallying the troops and putting it all together, and great time and great comments by the community out there. And yeah, really great way to start off the weekend.
Yeah. No, I was thinking again, Billy, Dan, I want to thank you guys for coming on. It was awesome getting to hear you guys' opinions and stuff. Sean, I always love chatting with you, buddy. But on that note, I'm going to end it. So everybody out there, thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Go check out Billy Strange at his YouTube channel. Check out Dan DiMaggio on his YouTube channel. And until next time, have fun racing, guys. Later.
See you guys.
See ya.